Gazing at the Mysteries by Samael Aun Weor. Chapter 1. Death. Many years ago, when my father died, we were veiling him, together with other people. These people were with me when I fell asleep for a moment, and I suddenly saw that my father had entered in the room where we were veiling him. He had his hands in the pockets of his pants and asked me who had died, who was that one that was laying down. And I thought, it was my father that had just died and he was speaking to me. Can you tell me the cause of this phenomenon? Okay, this is the disciple actually. Master, it is essential to understand that people never in life worry about waking up consciousness. Everybody in the social conglomerate have a deeply sleeping consciousness. It is obvious that after death, the intellectual animal mistakenly called man continues with his illusory life. If any discarnate person were told that he or she is dead, they obviously would not believe it. It is obvious that the disincarnate always believe that they are alive, because when they die, they find nothing different or unusual. In other words, what happens is they continue dreaming. Just like when they're awake and just like when they're asleep. They always see the same sun, the same clouds, and the same birds trying to fly from the dense sallow of the garden. The so-called dead, after the great step, stroll by the streets of the city or the different sectors of the district where they died. Normally they continue with their daily work, and they sit at the table in their house, and even they have the luxury of going to bed in their own bed. They would never think that they have passed on. They feel that they are living here and now. In these conditions, upon seeing their body in the coffin, they suppose that it is somebody else, not even remotely suspecting that it is their own dead body. That is the crude reality of facts. For this reason, do not be surprised at having had that intimate experience. What was the cause of the fear that my younger sister felt when entering the room where my grandfather was being veiled? Master, that fear has ancestral roots. In general, it is transmitted from parents to children. There is not anyone in life who hasn't felt it. The same as when we go into a dark cavern or when we are in the presence of a real ghost. The causa causorum of all this rests in the subjective psyche. Better we say in the sleeping consciousness. When one awakens the consciousness, it is very clear that such fears disappear radically. Third question. Why can the children see a discarnate presence and the adults cannot? My youngest son saw my father newly disincarnated and chatted with him. Master, we, on behalf of the truth, should be clear and emphasize certain ideas. It is not too much to say that all children are clairvoyants. We have been told that before closing the fontanelle of the newly born, that is the crown of the head, human creatures have the power of seeing the suprasensible, and they do not belong to these things that do not belong to the physical world, that are invisible to adults. If the human beings were to recover the innocence of mind and heart of a child, it is unquestionable that they would recover the divine clairvoyance, the power of seeing the hidden, the mysterious, the strange. Master, when we die, don't we have the danger of getting lost, or does somebody wait for us? Master. What is this phenomenon of getting lost, distinguished lady? What is it? This getting lost, gentlemen. When are you going to stop being afraid? Do you get lost maybe in your house? I have already spoken much and clearly about this. I have already said that During the first days, we continue living in the same house where we died, and that there are many testimonies of these facts. Upon dying, we meet those dear deceased that have died before us, that is, our relatives and friends. Now, what he's just mentioned here is devachan, though, because sometimes you see your dead relatives and friends, other times it's other people that you just desire. So they can be real deceased people, but they can also be illusions as part of a vacation that you go on, the devachan. But it doesn't last forever. And it's not real. They're not real beings. Just personalities. Next question. Can we recognize those relatives and friends that we meet when we disincarnate? Master. Could you recognize your dead mother, your father, your friends and relatives? Do you suppose that one could simply just not recognize one's dear beings? Your question is quite strange. It is obvious that no son could ignore the author of his days. It is clear that that we all have the capacity to recognize what we have known. When we die, do we suffer loneliness? Master. Each one is different. The selfish person, that one that is self-contained, the misanthropic, the one who doesn't love anybody. It's obvious that here they will have to endure the bitterness of solitude. After death, their painful solitary state in the region of the dead is pathetic, clear and defined. In accordance with what they call destiny, is it true that our days and hours are already fixed and counted? Master. Distinguished gentlemen, with great pleasure I will answer your question. When you leave for a trip, it is unquestionable that you take a certain amount of money for the diverse systems of transport. Obviously, you should know how to spend your money, because if you waste it, your trip will have to be interrupted. I want you to understand that upon us coming into the world of the angels of destiny, they deposit certain capital of vital values in our three brains. It is clear that if we waste it, if we put an end to this fortune, the trip by the path of existence will be interrupted quickly. But if we save them, our trip will be made long, and so we will reach old age. Next question. You surprised me with your talks of the three brains. I have always heard that we have one brain. Could you tell me which are those other two? Master. So you were surprised by the three brains. Understand me, disciple. Inside the cranial box, we have the intellectual brain. In the superior part of the dorsal spine, we have the motor brain, the capital center of the movements. In the solar plexus and other sympathetic centers, we have the brain of emotions. Do you understand now? Next question. Why do we feel fear upon thinking of death? And why do we become attached to life? Master, the desire to live is very powerful. All human beings want to live and are attached to sensual life. It is obvious that the adhesion and addiction to and the desire of material existence has us fascinated. In these conditions, in no way do we want to die. We are afraid of death. We don't want to cease existing. If the people, through the developing of understanding, lose the desire of material life, then the fear of death would disappear. One comes to lose such fear when one understands the illusory reality of our existence, when one sees that nothing here is permanent. Ideas pass away, as do things and people. Next question. When a person discarnates, what does the soul do? Where does it go in order to embody again? Master. It is necessary to speak clearly and to understand. People have the mind too full of dogma. Intellectual deterioration exists. Now people are not able to open up to the new, of seeing the natural. They always think of the artificial, and they consider this as the pattern of all. In other times, the human senses had not yet degenerated. In ancient times of our world, people could see the dead, hear and feel them, and so on. In Lemuria, for example, when somebody proceeded to disincarnate, they dug their own grave and went into it with the head toward the east, and happily, they said goodbye to their relatives and they smiled cheerfully. Who passed on to the beyond didn't remain invisible for their relatives. They could continue living together delightfully with their own. The air seemed transparent. In the atmosphere, one could clearly see the spirits, the souls, the innocent creatures of nature as well, the elementals. But we know that in the atmosphere, under those zones that belong to the three-dimensional, to the physical, metaphysical regions exist by way of worlds of spaces, where the souls of the dead live before taking new bodies again. Next question. Why is it that whenever I dream of my deceased relatives, I chat with them and they affirm to me that they have not died and that they are in perfect state of health? Master. Distinguished gentlemen, I like your question, and with the greatest pleasure I will answer you. Above all, I want you to understand that what is the process of the dream? It is unquestionable that the dream is a tiny death, as the vulgar statement says. During the hours in which our body lies sleeping in bed, the soul wanders outside of it. It goes to different places and contacts those who have died and even experiences the treat of chatting with them. It is clear that the dead never believe that they are dead because in their life they never worried about waking up consciousness. They always believe that they are alive. Now you will understand why the souls of the dear dead make such asseverations to you. But this could also be their being speaking with you and just in a symbolic way saying that they're continuing to live on. Sometimes that can be the case because in one sense they're not dead. They're continuing. Question, why do spiritualists have special predilection for calling or invoking the deceased? Master. Well, so they learned it from their teachers, Allan Kardec, Leon Dennis, and many others. The problem is that such authors didn't thoroughly investigate the essence of this question. Above all, I want, my honorable gentlemen, that you know that all the human beings have inside an I, an ego. Don't think that such I is the best. You study the Book of the Dead of the old Egyptians and you will understand what I'm saying to you. Have you read The Foe of Goethe? If you knew that what Mephistopheles really is, you would agree with me. It is unquestionable that the dark character of Mephistopheles is the ego, the I, the myself, who enters the body of the spiritualistic medium of the I of the deceased Ahriman Mephistopheles. It is indubitable that such I personifies all of our psychological defects and our errors. The being of the deceased never comes to these sessions of spirits. You distinguish between the being and the I. Who goes to such sessions is Satan, the I. I want you to understand that what the law of action and consequence is. The people that lend their body, their material being to the egos of the dead, to Mephistopheles, to Satan, in their future lives will have to suffer much because of epilepsy. Question. Would you be able to say what the being is? The being is the being, and the reason of the being, of existing, is the same, to be. The being is the divine, the immortal spark of all human beings, without principle nor end, and terribly divine. Yet the human beings don't possess that spark inside their bodies. But if we sanctified ourselves enough and we eliminated the I, the Mephistopheles, it is clear that one day the spark will enter in our bodies. Now I invite it to you to understand what the being is. Question. After death, does one remember their whole life that had just passed? Master. You know, young lady, that after having abandoned the physical body, all deceased relive in retrospective form the life that had just passed. The disincarnate will begin reviving those instants that preceded their death. For this reason, during the first few days, as we have already said, they will live amongst their people, in their house, in their village or town or city, in their office, in their work, in their school, etc. Later, continuing, they will live in all of those previous places. In each facet of their past existence, they will repeat the same dramas, the same words, the same scenes, and so on. The last retrospective part corresponds to the processes of childhood. And when they are finished this retrospection, we have to present ourselves before the tribunals of the divine justice. The angels of the law will judge us for our acts, for our works. 3 roads open up and before the disincarnate. First, some vacations in the luminous regions of the infinite space before taking another body. Second, the immediate return to a new womb, or after some time. And third, entering the hell worlds inside the interior of the planet in which we live. Question. Is it possible that the retrospection can be made while the person is living? Master. Many people that have been around that have been close to death have drowned, and or something similar, and they've seen their life pass in front of their eyes or in their mind in retrospective form. This same thing has happened to people who have had near-death experiences, and for other reasons. Question. A certain day, conducting business associated with matters of graves and crypts in order to bury some relatives, chatting with the administrator of the cemetery, I suddenly went quiet and wide-eyed for a good while, because he continued speaking, and upon seeing that I didn't pay attention, he asked me if something was wrong. After speaking to me in a strong manner, I woke up from my abstraction, and I related to him what had happened to me. When I stopped speaking, I began to feel the presence of somebody, and upon turning, saw next to me my mother-in-law, newly disincarnated, for whom I was fixing the matters of the cemetery. Later on, she smiled kindly and invited me to pass, making a gesture. As I could not move, she just said goodbye and disappeared from my view. Upon finishing my story, the man's hairs were standing up and he had goosebumps. He nervously told me that in all the years that he was working there in the vault, had he never had a sensation like that. Could you tell me what was the cause of this phenomenon? Master. With the greatest pleasure I will answer your question, distinguished gentleman. In no way should you be surprised because of a supersensible vision. In the times of Lemuria, as I've already said, the dead were visible in the atmosphere for everybody. What pity that now we are surprised with these types of visions. It is not at all rare that those who have died can be made visible from time to time in the atmosphere, and that is evident to you. It is obvious that you could verify this by direct perception. The administrator of the vault didn't get so far, but yes, he could have had certain psychic sensibility, enough so that his hair stood up and got the goosebumps. Question. Whenever I dream about my maternal grandmother, I see her sad. She points out something to me that when I awaken, I don't remember. But I have realized through the years that 8 days after these dreams, someone of my family would get on a state of grave illness. Could you say, to what is this due? Distinguished young lady, I've already said in many of my conferences that during the hours of the normal ordinary dream, the souls of the alive, the living, escape from the body that sleeps in the bed, and they then contact the souls of the dead. That you see your grandmother, that is normal in the unknown dimension. She visits in instances of anguish or when any person of your family is getting ill. You already see how the dead are so near to us. Chapter 2. The Goblins. In a place within the central Colombian mountain range, or just off of it, there was an abandoned cattle ranch. One night, 2 workers entered it, accompanied by 4 large dogs. As the hours of night approached, one of the men went out to fetch water. Upon leaving the house, he began to scream. Hearing this, his companion told him not to do so, warning that it was dangerous, since in that same mountain lived the being known as Patasola, who could respond to the noise and come toward them. The man paid no attention and continued toward the water, screaming all the while. When he had filled the container and was already returning to the house, he stopped once more and began to scream again. This time an answer came from the high parts of the mountain range. His companion again begged him to stop screaming, explaining that he had already seen that result, since Patasola had answered from the heights. The man still paid no attention, continued screaming, and Patasola continued responding, drawing nearer and nearer to where they were. Seeing that Patasola was approaching, the 2 men took refuge inside the house and tightly closed the doors. Shortly after, Patasola arrived at the house, and the 4 mastiffs that accompanied the men had to face a true battle with this being. The men were shut inside and could do nothing but suffer, and there is no doubt that their only defense were the dogs. After long hours of fighting, the dogs finally put Patasola to flight, and as it retreated, it continued emitting a similar cry. When the men realized that the being had gone away, they left the house and departed quickly, never to return. Could you give me an explanation of this story, Master? Ordinary people live here in the 3-dimensional world, ignoring the existence of a 4th coordinate of a 4th dimension. It is necessary to know that beyond our 3-dimensional world lies the unknown dimension, the etheric region. If we carefully observe the color of distant mountains, we can perceive an intense and beautiful blue. It is obvious that this color is the ether of the 4th dimension. We have been told that in a remote future, the whole ether will be visible in full form within the very air that we breathe. Modern scientists emphatically deny the ether and that, or rather say that it exists only in magnetic fields. The people of the Middle Ages denied the roundness of the Earth, supposing it to be flat. When Galileo affirmed that the Earth was round and that it was not immobile, he was about to be condemned to death. When he was required to swear, with his hands upon the Holy Bible, that the Earth was not round and did not move, he said, "I swear it, but it moves, it moves." Thus, although we deny the existence of the ether, although we swear that it does not exist. We will have to say, parodying Galileo, but it exists. It exists. In that etheric region, in that fourth coordinate, live the elemental creatures of nature. And this is something we must understand deeply. These beings called elementals. They're called this precisely because they live within the elements. You know, my dear friend, that fire is inhabited by elemental creatures. You also understand that the air is densely populated by that same class of beings, and that water and earth are likewise inhabited by these elementals. The creatures of fire have been known since ancient times as salamanders. The elementals of the air are designed by the name sylphs, or designated as sylphs. The beings of the water are called undines, nereids, sirens, and so on. The creatures that live among the rocks of the earth have been named pygmies, gnomes, and the like. It is clear that the forms of these creatures vary greatly. The creatures of fire are thin and dry, very similar to crickets, although much larger in size. The creatures of the air appear as small, very beautiful children with rosy faces like dawn. The elementals of the water take diverse forms. Some appear as ineffable ladies, joyful among the waves of the immense sea. Others have the form of siren fish, with the head of a woman, so mermaids. And finally, there are undines that play among the clouds or live in lakes and rivers that flow through rocky channels. The gnomes of the earth, the pygmies, appear as old men with long white beards and a ceremonious demeanor. They usually live in the mines of the earth or guard treasures hidden within it. All these elementals of nature are useful in the great creation. Some stimulate the fire, others propel the air, forming the winds, still others animate the waters, and others work in the alchemy of the metals within the bowels of the earth. Many other creatures exist that populate forests, deserts, and mountains. You distinguished gentlemen have spoken to us of the Patasola, a very particular elemental of the mountainous regions of your country. It is evident that there exists a whole series of elemental creatures endowed with great force and power. The event you have narrated clearly indicates that this type of elemental possesses sufficient power to make its presence felt in the three-dimensional world, in the physical world. In the story mentioned, it is unquestionable that there was a fight between the dogs and the unknown being. I can emphatically assure you that had it not been for the dogs, the two men would certainly have died. Really, in the deep bosom of nature, in the most distant places, in the mystery of the forests, there exist goblins, fairies, and creatures that people of the cities do not even remotely suspect. Not long ago, news of a strange death spread throughout the world. A certain Antarctic explorer was found with his throat cut beneath his tent on the continent of the South Pole. The most interesting aspect of this event lay in the words found in the logbook of his expedition. There one could read sentences such as the following: "It is already coming. I can already see the monster approaching. It is here, oh my God." What kind of monster could it have been? Some guardian of the fourth dimension, that is obvious. Oh, that last part was Samael. So he's saying, what kind of monster could it have been? Some guardian of the fourth dimension. By developing clairvoyance, we can verify the reality of the fourth dimension and of the elemental creatures that live within it. By the way of goblins, Master, I wish to relate to you an event that occurred 20 years ago in a town called Genova, Caldas, Colombia. One morning, a girl was sent by her parents to a store, and on her way back home, she encountered a woman who bore a certain resemblance to her mother and who invited the girl to follow her. and the girl did so, leaving the town. And when night fell and the parents realized that the girl had not returned, they informed the authorities of her disappearance. Hours later, a group was organized to search for her. They went to a place where someone had reported seeing her pass by, and as they approached the central mountain range, a person informed them that somewhere nearby the girl had passed by, and that when asked where she was going, she replied that she was going somewhere with her mother. They continued to search along the mountain range, and after 3 days they found the girl seated, half naked, upon an old tree trunk, unable to speak. When they brought her back to town, she recovered her speech and explained that she had been led to that place by a person identical to her mother, who later abandoned her there. Do you wish to explain to me the cause of this, and whether it was indeed a goblin, as the people of that place assured us? With the greatest pleasure, I will answer your question. Obviously, the girl was abducted by a goblin that assumed the same form as her mother. Skeptical people of the cities do not believe in these things, but the simple people of the forests give living testimony to the reality of goblins, which at bottom are nothing more than simple elementals of nature, inhabitants of the fourth dimension, of the fourth coordinate, of the fourth vertical. We Gnostics possess scientific means and procedures by which we can enter that fourth dimension at will, consciously and positively. In this way, we can meet such creatures of nature and converse with them. Would you explain to me in what way is it possible to penetrate with body and flesh into the fourth dimension? I guess this is a student asking this. I would like to see those goblins, those elementals. And if you have the procedure, please teach it to us. The master continues, "But my friend, you were asking me of something sensational. I want you to know that we Gnostics do not cultivate selfishness. I have the key and the procedures, and with the greatest pleasure I am going to teach one of them to you. Above all, you must know that nature is not something unconscious, as many suppose. Nature is truly Mother Nature. She possesses formidable psychic powers that we can use in order to penetrate voluntarily, consciously, and positively into the fourth dimension. You should lie down on the side of your heart, so left side, with your head resting upon the palm of your left hand, and concentrate intensely on the Mother Nature. Beg her, implore her, beseech her with words that come from the heart, with simple phrases, asking that she transport you, that she take you through the fourth dimension to any forest or any nearby place. When you begin to feel your legs and arms in a state of lassitude, when you begin to doze and feel drowsy, then, filled with intense faith, rise from your bed, saying, 'Mother of mine, in the name of Christ, I ask you to take me with my body to such and such place.' You must state clearly the place to which you wish to go. I advise you, my good friend, that before going out into the street, you first give a small jump, with the intention of floating in the surrounding atmosphere, in order to verify whether you are truly in the fourth dimension. It is evident that if you do not float, if you are unable to remain suspended in the atmosphere, it is because you have not yet penetrated the world of the fourth dimension. In that case, return to bed and repeat the experiment. Some people succeed immediately. Others require months or even entire years in this apprenticeship. It is urgent to know that every human being has their own particular divine mother, that intelligent principle that created their physical body, that united zoosperm and ovum for fecundation, that gave form to each organic cell. Our particular divine mother can help us, provided that we conduct ourselves in an upright manner. Work with this technique, and when you achieve success, you will live consciously in the world of the fourth dimension, among all the elemental creatures of nature. Now I'm going to add here that he just explained how to astral project into the astral plane, which is, in general, the fifth dimension, the dream world, and we're constantly interacting more or less in the fifth dimension here. So it seems to me that when you're in the fifth dimension in the dream world, you're already more or less part of the fourth dimension as well. And you can, I mean, it makes sense to me that as soon as you're in a dream, you can start talking to elementals in the fourth dimension, even though you're in the fifth dimension, more or less. And also, he's explained in other books that the fourth dimension, when you're really in the fourth dimension, it has this intense electric blue. And he describes the same thing for the causal world too. So that's how you know completely 100% you're definitely deep in the fourth dimension, but it doesn't always look like that. In a dense forest of the department of Huila in the Republic of Colombia. Oh, actually, I'm going to finish off what I was explaining by adding that since he's explaining astral projection, which is technically lucid dreaming because you're lucid, your consciousness is lucid, aware in the dream world. So you don't have to project necessarily. If you find because it's very difficult to do this, and it's much easier to just find yourself aware and awake in a dream at some point, becoming aware and becoming lucid or cognizant. That also works too. If you find yourself in the astral plane, in that moment, you can start doing work like this. In the dense forest of the department of Huila in the Republic of Colombia, it once happened that a farm worker, while between the state of wakefulness and sleep, heard noises near his house during the hours of the night, and heard a voice that said, "Light the candle, light the candle, light the candle." The man paid no attention, but when he was about to fall asleep, he heard the same words repeated once more, 3 times. In view of this, he arose and lit the candle, seating himself beside it. When the night had already advanced, the man fell asleep again and once more heard the same voice repeating, "Light the candle, light the candle, light the candle." He awoke and saw that the candle was going out. Oh, I guess, actually, let's see here. What happened? Oh, so he sat beside it and then fell asleep, I guess. Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, okay, it says that here. He awoke and saw that the candle was still going out, or starting to go out, so he rekindled it again with firewood, and while doing so, he suddenly remembered a dream he had 7 years ago, when he was living in another region. In that dream, he saw himself alone in a forest where a wild animal attacked him. Could you explain to me who gave those orders, and what the dream from 7 years earlier had to do with what was happening in that moment? That's very interesting. That's obviously his divine mother or his innermost assuring him that. I'm also curious why he had to light the candle like that. It must be something to do with sparking clarity in the consciousness, wakefulness. So, Master says, "Distinguished gentlemen, I am pleased to answer your question. Your story is indeed interesting. The man involved in this experience had dreamed 7 years before the event, and it is clear that this dream was completely fulfilled. There is no doubt that his dream was prophetic, and that it later became reality. Undoubtedly, discarnate people, that is, the souls of deceased individuals who in other times had lived in those forests as shepherds of swine, assisted the man." Well, yeah, it could definitely be that. It could be people from the forest, ghosts, personalities, beings of those people. They perceived the danger that threatened him. There is no doubt that in such forests there are ferocious beasts. Tigers, panthers, wild animals of all kinds. The deceased warned him of the necessity of keeping the fire lit in order to avoid danger and defend himself against nocturnal attacks possibly from tigers in particular. Do you see how we have invisible friends who watch over us and help us? Okay, that's interesting. 2 years ago, during a gathering in which unusual cases were discussed, one of the attendees, who worked in a company dealing with electrical equipment, told us that in Scotland there are many goblins. He was especially perplexed by the following case. A close friend of his had told him that he had become friends with a goblin and that they conversed for long hours. He further explained that the goblin enjoyed eating certain sweet and sour cherries that grew in very remote places of the forest. Since no one believed him, he decided to make a physical demonstration. He proposed that the goblin take him to the place where the cherries grew. But since they could not walk together, he asked the goblin to enter a cloth bag so that he could carry it. Once the goblin was inside the bag, the Scotsman ran to the side of his house ran to the house of his friend, shouting in order to prove that he was indeed friends with the goblin and that it was inside the bag. Great, however, was their surprise when they opened it and found it empty. Ashamed and embarrassed, he left the house and walked toward the place where the sweet and sour cherries, so loved by the goblin, were found. On the way, he realized that something was moving inside the cloth bag and that he still carried in his hand. Upon arriving at that place where the cherries grew, a rabbit jumped out of the bag and began to devour the cherries. Shortly thereafter, it transformed into the goblin. Seeing this, the Scotsman reproached him, saying, "Why did you play such a dirty trick on me? Do you not see that I have been ridiculed by my friends because of your action?" The goblin replied that he did not consent to that kind of demonstration, and that if the man wished to continue being his friend, he must promise never again to use him in order to convince others of their friendship. Is it possible that goblins can disappear and reappear, changing their form? Master, with the greatest pleasure I will answer your question. It is said that such goblins can assume very handsome masculine forms, with blonde hair and rosy complexions. Some affirm that they fall in love with young women of the forests, and that they are accustomed to serenading them with delightful music. Ancient traditions state that only competitions between orchestras, resounding with exquisite melodies, could drive them away. The story is very interesting. You can see how a person might become friends with a goblin. Unfortunately, this individual made the mistake of attempting to use his invisible friend for demonstrations. It is evident that goblins are enemies of exhibitionism. When they offer their friendship, they do so sincerely. However, people often possess an exhibitionist tendency, and this is very serious. It should not surprise you that the creature took the form of a rabbit, nor that it should not surprise you, and nor that it devoured the cherries. These beings consume different substances, principles, and fruits of nature. They are creatures that exist, that have life. They normally live in the fourth dimension, but in certain solitary places of the forests, they can make themselves visible and tangible to the flesh to ordinary people. Oh yeah, see, this is the thing I wanted to figure out here, because it seems to me that people are like schizophrenic in seeing these things. I don't know how malleable they are to be able to shift back and forth through dimensions, but they can appear like this whenever they do so desire. The vain people of the world no longer accept these realities because they are too deeply immersed in barbarism. They have degenerated their psychic senses and become excessively materialistic. We Gnostics think in a different way. We possess exercises and systems to develop our psychic powers. And through certain procedures, we can allow ourselves the privilege of coming into contact not only with goblins, but also with the devas and elementals of this great creation.
Chapter 3. Witches. 1. In a country estate where Spaniards lived at the time of the conquest, noises were heard constantly at midnight, and a man on a horse was heard to arrive, who dismounted and entered the house to open the doors of the rooms, until one day the administrator decided to go and see what was that produced those noises. Upon coming outside, he saw in the courtyard a man on horseback, to whom he said, "On behalf of God Almighty, tell me, what do you want?" The man answered, "Come with me." The administrator followed him up to a creek near the estate, where the horseman stopped and said, "In this place there is a buried treasure that I beg you to dig up." The administrator got it out, and instantly the noises in the country estate ceased. Could you tell me something about this story? There is not doubt that this unusual and strange case has solid foundations. When talking about life itself, we should emphasize certain transcendental ideas. The existence of the superior dimensions of space is well known. It clearly stands out with meridian clarity that the souls of the dead live in the unknown dimension. The materialization of a metaphysical entity is clear and apparent. It is evident that the discarnate, the deceased that riding an energetic steed spoke so to the surprised man, had left buried a valuable treasure. The remorse, the addiction to the vile metal, etc., etc., are more than enough reasons in order to achieve the unusual appearance. The concrete fact of so apparent a materialization of the psychic type is interesting. We should affirm in severe tone that that deceased abandoned the unknown dimension in order to penetrate the physical world, where he became visible and tangible. It is comprehensible that upon such treasure being discovered, the strange metaphysical noises stopped. Cases like these are plentiful everywhere. Here in Mexico, the Plateados, co-religionists of Pancho Villa, left fabulous hidden treasures, and I even know about a place where psychic extraordinary phenomenon have happened. This happens in all the parts of the world. 2. One Holy Thursday, upon going by the lagoon of Monteva, some people saw a beautiful woman of golden hair so long that it covered her body, taking a bath amid the lagoon. After a while of being observing her, it was big their surprise upon seeing that the woman disappeared amid the waters. Could you say what class of woman this could be? With the greatest pleasure I will give the gentleman an answer to his question. We have already spoken clearly about the elementals of the fire, of the air, of the waters, and of the earth. It is not strange in any way that one of those elementals with the appearance of a woman of singular beauty became visible before the people in the crystalline waters of the lake. Those Undines construct their palaces in the bottom of the waters, and it is obvious that they glow burning in the mysterious landscape. At some time myself also had a similar experience navigating in the Atlantic Ocean. When the sun began to rise amongst the deep waters, because so it seemed, I saw two extraordinary nereids that, walking among the waters, came in the opposite direction to our small ship. The one had violet color, not only in her head and in her eyes, but also in her tunic and sandals. The other had rather the color of coral, and their continent was majestic and sublime. That pair of beauties said something to me, and then they stopped on the cliffs, contemplating me deeply. I don't deny being able to establish a friendship with those nereids of the immense sea. They make their homes out of etheric matter in the abysmal bottom of the gusty ocean, and it is even said that when they fall in love with a man, they take their soul in order to live together with him in their oceanic habitation. 3. Here in Mexico, during the time of the Inquisition happened an unusual case of witchcraft. 2 women were accused before the Inquisition, and when the clergymen and guards entered the house of the women, they only saw on a bed for legs, because the bodies were absent, simply not there. The clergymen proceeded liturgically with exorcisms and conjurations of all type. Suddenly something strange happened. 2 horrible big birds came into that room before the astonished clergymen, and they then threw themselves into the bed where the legs lay. The clergymen, horrified, were amazed upon seeing that those birds of wrong omen assumed human forms. The legs came to form part of the bodies of those women that, instants before, were only sinister air creatures. The Inquisition proceeded against these witches and condemned them to die in the fire. Could the master give me an explanation? The case that you have related is interesting, and it is obvious that you have the answer. Much has been talked about witchcraft, and in the Middle Age many women burned in the fire died accused of such crime. There is not doubt that these are simply black witches that knows how to put their physical body inside the fourth dimension, in order to fly by air, or in order to walk on the waters, or attend their harrowing witches' Sabbath. We have been told that here in Mexico those harrowing creatures are able to leave their physical legs in order to fly in the air with more comfort. From a rigorous clinical point of view, in the light of the official anatomy, it is obvious that no doctor would accept such an awesome statement. At this moment comes to memory the witches of Topsel and the metamorphosis of Ovid. They relate that Apuleo became an ass. Have you never heard speak of lycanthropy and the wolf man? The human organism has infinite possibilities that the men of science do not remotely suspect. When a physical body submerges inside the fourth dimension, it could assume any shape and even abandon part of its members. It is unquestionable that the scientists of this time, if they were to listen to our discourse, they would indignant rip their vestments, thundering and lightning and pronouncing terrible words against us, the siblings of the Gnostic movement. The official science is not the whole science. The day will arrive in which the sages could verify the reality of the fourth coordinate and all their infinite possibilities of metaphysical type. That the witches could abandon their legs or transform themselves into beasts, it is not a new case. Already Aeneas, the Trojan, found in the Estrophanes Islands those big birds headed by the loathsome Selene, that so much damage caused to him. Those that make fun of our word should study the Aeneid of Virgil, the poet of Mantua. In no way we praise those sinister creatures of darkness. It is obvious that a horrible future awaits them in the hellish worlds. Those who have studied the Divine Comedy of the Dante will find the witches of the witches' Sabbath in hell, torturing with their horrendous claws the human plants. Cruel harpies that hating God and the Divine Mother are hurled along, loathsome, in the black cliff. For, teacher, as you have written much in your books about the fourth dimension, several people tell me that they don't believe that it exists, because they want to see it. Palpably, as I have not known how to give the appropriate answer, I would like you to explain to me in what form I could give such an answer. Ah, by God and Holy Mary! This is not questioning of beliefs, we are talking about scientific matters. Beliefs are for religious matters, but science is something different. Please pay attention. The fourth dimension is the time, and anyone who wants to know something about this fourth coordinate should study the theory of relativity of Einstein. I see you sitting at a table, writing. If you observe this piece of furniture, you will see that it has 3 dimensions: length, width, and height. Furthermore, there exists a fourth vertical, and this is the time. How long ago did the carpenter build this table? Everybody perceives the fourth dimension, because there is no person that doesn't have a certain number of years. There will be people that are newly born, other that are 20 years old, and many old men that await only death. Time in itself has 2 aspects, the chronometrical, that is only superficial, and the spatial, that is the fundamental one. Think, I am not talking about your beliefs, we are dealing with matters merely scientific. It is necessary to have a little bit of maturity in order to understand. The conquest of the external space, the cosmic trips, will be impossible while we have not been able to conquer time, that is to say, the fourth coordinate. If a cosmic ship could leave from our world at the speed of the light, 300,000 kilometers per second, and if after several hours of cosmic trip it were to return to the Earth conserving the same speed, you can be absolutely sure that the crew of such ship would not find the world that they left, but a future world, an Earth advanced in many thousand of years. This already was demonstrated by Einstein with his mathematical calculations. The day in which the men of science invent cosmic ships able to pass beyond the speed of the light, they will have conquered time. In other words, they will have conquered the fourth dimension. That is everything. The 3-dimensional worlds is the result of the speed of light squared. If we passed beyond the speed of the light, we entered into the fourth dimension. The witches of the mentioned story, by means of dark procedures, cross the barrier of the speed of light instantly and penetrate in the fourth dimension. But this is not something advisable. There exist sacred virtuous procedures, like those of Peter, the apostle of Jesus, or those of the divine Nazarene, by means of which we could enter into the fourth dimension. 5. At a reunion a story was told that the grandmothers of several of the present used to relate the following anecdote about witches. In the times of the Mexican Revolution, some people found several pair of legs among the ashes of an oven or of the big braziers that were used in the large houses of that time. Afraid of such discovery, they waited in order to see what was happening and were surprised that some time later the witches returned in their brooms, without their legs, and that they put them back by means of the art of magic. They celebrated their strange ritual and then were gone to their houses like any normal people. These stories circulated by word of mouth between the neighbors of the region, causing astonishment. Would you be so kind to tell us whether these events were true? Distinguished gentlemen, we have already spoken quite clearly about this, and we could assert that such things are true. This type of tenebrous people, here in Mexico, abandon their legs when they enter the fourth dimension. 6. Only here in Mexico? Yes, those of us who we have explored the different metaphysical lands, we know that this act, abandoning the legs, happens only in our homeland. We have explored different countries and places, and the investigation has taken us very far. Permit me inform you that in Salamanca, Spain, the castle of Klingsor exists, inside which the workshop of witchcraft functions. The harrowing witches, affiliated to that hole of darkness, attend their meetings, and they don't leave their legs in their beds, neither at the foot of the chimney, neither elsewhere. That class of people is becoming more and more perverse, and they are finally thrown in the dark abyss where one can only hear the cries and the gnashing of teeth. 7. In a certain place that I used to know in South America, being on my bed face up, I felt noises in the part of the room where I was. I perceived an unpleasant scent that penetrated below the door, and minutes I later felt that a person sat on my chest, paralyzing my whole body. I was not able to speak, neither to make any muscular movement. After a few minutes I remembered that I could save myself making a conjuration, but since I could not speak, the only thing I could make, mentally, was the sign of the star of 5 points, and the entity retired. Could you do me the favor of clarifying what class of entity was this, master? I will answer the distinguished gentleman his question. We know by direct experience that those abominable creatures of the witches' Sabbath are accustomed to throw themselves on the bodies of their victims, in order to bite them in the body, forming horrible stains in their skin, or in order to take out of the dense form the soul and take it to any place of the world, or in order to torment them in any way. In these cases, we have advised to pray with great vehemence, recite the conjuration of the 7 of Solomon, or the conjuration of the 4. This type of prayers is of extraordinary efficacy for the mental and physical defense. With these conjurations the harrowing harpies flee, leaving us in peace. Conjuration of the 4. Caput mortem, imperit tibi dominus per vivum et devotum serpentem. Cherub, imperit tibi dominus per Adam jot cha var. Aquila errans, imperit tibi dominus per alas tori. Serpens, imperit tibi dominus tetragrammaton, per angelum et leonum. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Anael. Fluat Juda per spiritum Elohim. Manit in terra per Adam jot chava. Fiat firmamentum per Jehovah Sabaoth. Fiat judicium per ignum in virtue Michael. Angel of the blind eyes, obey, or pass away with this holy water. Work, winged bull, or revert to the earth, unless thou wilt that I should pierce thee with this sword. Chained eagle, obey my sign, or fly by this breathing. Writhing serpent, crawl at my feet, or be tortured by the sacred fire and give way before the perfumes that I burn in it. Water, return to water. Fire, burn. Air, circulate. Earth, revert to earth. By virtue of the pentagram, which is the morning star, and by the name of the tetragram, which is written in the center of the cross of light. Amen. 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 Conjuration of the 7. In the name of Michael, may Jehovah command thee and drive thee hence, Chavajoth. In the name of Gabriel, may Adonai command thee, and drive thee hence, Baal. In the name of Raphael, begone before Eliel, Samgabiel. By Samuel Sabaoth, and in the name of Elohim Jibah, get thee hence, Andramelech. By Zachariel et Sashalmelech, be obedient unto Elva, Sana Gabriel. By the divine and human name of Shaddai, and by the sign of the pentagram which I hold in my right hand, in the name of the angel Anael, by the power of Adam and Eve, who are Jochevah, begon Lilith. Let us rest in peace, Nehema. By the holy Elohim and by the names of the genii Kashiel, Sahaltiel, Aphiel and Zarahiel, at the command of Oriphiel, depart from us, Moloch. We deny thee our children to devour. Amen. 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 Chapter 4. Psychic Narrations. My friends, it is urgent to learn how to travel in the fourth dimension. Many will find such learning difficult, but it is not really so intricate. What are needed is willpower, indefatigable tenacity, and infinite patience. There comes to my memory at this instant some very important episodes related to the jinn state. When I began my learning, I certainly had to suffer a little. I was peacefully in bed with my head resting on my left palm. I concentrated in my mother nature and in the Christ, asking with all my heart to be taken in my physical body to remote places on earth. When I already was in a certain state of lassitude, when I was beginning to feel drowsy, I softly left my bed and went out into the yard of the house. There I gave long jumps with the intention of floating into space. Many times it was raining and then I had to endure the water and the cold. Dressed in my night clothes, and when I saw that I was not floating, I returned to bed to repeat this experiment over and over again unceasingly during the night. My sleeplessness was immense, my body was losing weight, my face was pallid and my eyes surrounded by dark shadows, but I was stubborn and one day I was successful. In a state of drowsiness I got up from my bed and huge was my astonishment upon finding 3 ladies inside my chamber. One of them helped me get out of bed, while the other 2 sitting at a table drew lots with some cards, to see which of them would take charge of my insignificant person. It was clear that the luck fell on the one who lifted me from my bed. She helped me leave the room, and led me along a corridor that led to the street, opened the hall door of the house and took me out to the street. I then saw many other people that were also engaged in the same kind of work in that town, where they lived at the present moment. The lady told me that I could float in the atmosphere, and upon doing this I felt a great happiness. I will admit that there was a certain lack of wisdom in my acts, because I, full of happiness, embarked upon the clouds, or threw myself towards the earth in order to fly over the houses, the towers of the churches, etc., etc. 1. And nobody saw you? Oh. Distinguished lady, I say to you that nobody saw me, because my body had entered the fourth dimension. I had escaped from the world of 3 dimensions, and for that reason it had become invisible for the people of this world. The lady led me to New York. There was a gentleman that was also working in the same way. That woman helped him also and took him out from his apartment, so that there were already 2 travelers of the fourth dimension. We crossed the Atlantic Ocean and we then flew on to Europe, going by different cities in ruins, because we were in the Second World War. That man told me, I don't know what I see in you, but the only thing I know is that inside you there is much philosophy and occultism. The gentleman warned me of the dangers that existed in the lands from Europe. He told me that we have to have much care, because if we came to leave the fourth vertical, we would fall in those countries without documentation of any kind, for which they would kill us or put us in jail. You are right, I answered. In no way we should abandon the fourth coordinate. During the trip we stopped for a while in order to enter a dressmaker's house. The lady that drove us manifested the desire to help some people that lived there. In the meantime we remained inside a contiguous room, chatting. When we left that house with our guide, we continued floating on the European sky in order to arrive at the place where we wanted to go. Once completed the required investigations, I said goodbye to my guide and to my friend and returned home. You can already see, distinguished friends, how with will and patience one is able to learn how to put the physical body inside the fourth dimension. To me this represented a whole year of bitterness. 2. How did the guide know that in that house that you mention help was needed? And what type of help? With the greatest pleasure I will respond to your question, dear lady. It is clear that the people that lived in such a house were friends of the guide. The help given by the lady that guided us was related to the jinn studies. It had as purpose to help a person to enter in the fourth dimension, that is all. 3. How long were you making that trip? Ah, well, distinguished lady, I consider that in coming and going it could have lapsed a pair of hours. 4. How did you know how to return on your own? Ah, this question is very interesting and gives an opportunity for a beautiful explanation. It happens that in the world of the fourth dimension everything returns to its original starting point. If we open a door, this closes immediately by itself. If we took an object from one place to another, it returns by itself to its place. For example, in certain occasion I left the house by the fourth dimension, I located myself exactly at a street in the distance and I then took off my nightshirt. I threw it into space and observed carefully the course that the shirt followed. I then saw with astonishment that floating in the atmosphere the object returned home, entered by the door and ended up on the bed. Therefore, it is not strange that I was overtaken by this returning force to go back in an instinctive and automatic manner to the bedroom until my body was placed in the position in which it was before. 5. In a snowy region from South America, a man that looked after livestock, being tired, stopped at a solitary cabin accompanied by his dog. He lit a fire in order to be more comfortable. At midnight he felt strange noises and heard the dog bark as if an unknown person were approaching. Upon observing what happened, I saw a man covered with hair. Without any clothes, he took his rifle in order to attack the visitor, who said, "My friend, don't attack me, don't hurt me, that I come in peace," telling him how he had reached that state by making a promise many years before to live far from civilization and not allow any woman to see him. The cattleman offered him food and a roof in the cabin and indicated that he lived in a country property where women don't live, that when he wanted he could go over there in order to chat with him and eat what he wanted. One day, the hairy man visited him in the country property and, while chatting with him, he observed that some ladies from that place were looking at him, fleeing then without ever returning. Could you explain us, Master, why did he make this resolution to live in the solitude and far from women? Ah, with the greatest pleasure I will respond to your question, distinguished gentleman. I find your story very interesting. Certainly the case of the hairy man is very lamentable. In all of this I see a little ignorance. I find it too absurd, escaping from women, because it would be impossible to achieve liberation, salvation, since they are an important element in life. Love is the foundation of liberation, of salvation, of illumination. Only by loving we can reach God, only by truly loving we can reach the eternal blessedness. We have written many works and it is worthwhile that our readers study them. The Perfect Matrimony, for example, is one of those books that could teach to the people what love is. There are some other important texts, for example, The Mystery of the Golden Blossom, Parsifal Unveiled, and many others. There is not doubt that the hairy man became an authentic savage. In contact with nature he sprouted the skin of an ape man, involuted until he was converted in an ape, that is all. 6. At the time of the colony, two gentlemen that rode toward the city in a rainy day, trying to rest and shelter from the rain, they saw a tavern in which it seemed that there was a party, because those that were there danced, drank and laughed. They entered and also stayed to take part in the party. Upon feeling tired, they retired to their room to sleep. The next day, when they woke up, their surprise was huge when they saw that in that place there was only old, ancient dust and skeletons spread around the whole house. Frightened, they escaped from there panic-stricken. Could you tell me what was the cause of this phenomenon? Interesting story, distinguished gentleman. There is here a marvelous phenomenon of the fourth dimension. There is not doubt that those travelers had momentary access to the fourth dimension in which they could see and hear many discarnate people, deceased say, with which they passed the time in a friendly way. The next day they received a surprise upon discovering in such tavern only the bones of the dead. 7. A Bohemian that was accustomed to live in the taverns, one day upon leaving from a tavern in order to go to his house, felt a strange noise that came behind him. Upon looking back, he saw a human figure without a head that followed him at a certain distance. The man began to run shouting, with which people came out of their houses to help him. Upon arriving near his house, he passed out. Hours later, when he woke up, he related to the people what had happened. Do you want to explain to me why did he see a man without a head? The gentleman talks to us about a decapitated person. Many people that perished in the guillotine during the French Revolution continued in the beyond, in the unknown dimension in the shape of beheaded human beings. It happens that those that have died that way sometimes are made visible in such a sinister figure in the physical world. My friends, it is good that you know that charmed lands exist, regions of the 1001 Nights, and that all that belongs to the fourth dimension. Nature has marvels and prodigies. I remember that in some of my trips that I took around lands from America, I arrived at the house of a boy that was very sick. The crows, vultures, etc. stopped on the roof of that house. This was happening before the doctors predicted that the boy would die. What is astonishing is that such birds, that evidently are associated with the ray of Saturn, can guess with so much success and know with absolute accuracy the place where a creature was going to die. We can assert in fact that this boy died without the medical science having been able to save him. There is not doubt that that type of birds of the sky completes a beautiful mission, cleaning the nature of all decay. It is clear that they have powers that allow them to know the place where somebody is supposed to die. All this invites us to meditate on the powers of nature. We can all get in contact with the elementals and know the marvels and prodigies of nature if we learn how to travel in the fourth dimension. When the hour of death arrives, the angel entrusted with cutting the thread of existence joins the dying at his deathbed. At the precise instant in which we exhale the final breath, the angel of death takes the soul out of the body and cuts with his reed the silver cord, a certain mysterious thread, silvery, that connects the soul with the physical body. Such magnetic cord could lengthen or shorten until the infinite. A dream is said to be a tiny death. It is known that during a dream the soul is not inside the body, but that it travels to remote distances and then the silver thread lengthens infinitely. Thanks to such a thread the soul is able to return to the physical body in the moment of awakening after the dream. The moribund are accustomed to see the angel of death with his ghostly, skeletal figure, adorned with the funeral apparel. It is clear that this so sinister figure is only assumed when these angels are working. Outside of their work they assume beautiful figures, maybe of children, maybe of ladies or of venerable old men. The angels of death are never bad or perverse. They always work in accordance with the great law. Each one is born in his hour and dies exactly in his time. The souls of the dead recapitulate or review the life that has just passed in detailed form. This procedure is always carried out retrospectively. During such a process the souls retake their steps, live in those places where they lived before. They always repeat the same things, the same facts, the same events. When they come to revive the instance of their first childhood they seem like children. It is obvious that once they have reviewed their life as it happened, they come before the master of karma, before the tribunals of the law, ready to be judged. This is what it is called to come before the tribunals of God. From such a judgment, from such a verdict, follows the future of each soul. Some souls get on the celestial regions before returning to this world, others enter in the hellish worlds, located inside the interior of the earth, and others, finally, return either immediately or somewhat later to this valley of tears. This return to this world can be quite painful. Unfortunately, we always have to return. The angels of life connects the silver thread with the zoosperm that is going to be fecundated in a womb. The creature is in gestation in the womb, but the soul that returns only enters the body at the instant in which the baby makes the first inhalation of air. Understanding this is vital and indispensable. Therefore we, before this life that we have at this moment, had not only one past existence, but many others. Each one is born in accordance with their own destiny. Some are born in rich and very wealthy families, and others return amongst poor people and beggars. If we did well in our past existence, we pick up the prize now. We return to homes where nothing is lacking and we will have comforts of all kinds. If we did wrong, if we wasted money, if we were greedy, if we exploited our fellow men, if we made the error of stealing or of ruining another, if we made the wrong use of money, it is evident that it is our turn to return amongst miserable families, dressed with the bodies of beggars, unhappy, hungry and suffering malnutrition. So each one gets the fruit of their own actions. It is clear that people don't remember their past lives because they have the consciousness asleep. If people had an awakened consciousness, then it is obvious that they would remember all their previous existences. One should make an effort in doing works of charity, dress the nude, feed the hungry, give a drink to the thirsty, teach the ignorant, etc., 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 so that in their future return to the earth after death, they are born in beautiful homes, between people of good customs, with much abundance, peace and prosperity. 1. Do angels of life and angels of death exist? With the greatest pleasure I will respond to your question. The angels of death are present at the beds of the dying and live normally in the fifth dimension, in the astral world of which we are told by the esotericism and the occultism. The angels of life have bodies of children, they know much of occult medicine, they have power over the waters of existence, over the womb, over the amniotic liquid, over the creative organs, and they live normally in the fourth dimension, in the etheric world. There is not doubt that the angels of life work with the women during childbirth. They could open every womb and help in every birth, they are accustomed to be extraordinary doctors, really they are those entrusted with connecting the thread of life with the fecundated zoosperm, they are the agent secrets that help all women that are giving birth. Then, in accordance with what you explained to us, does predestination exist, and is one able to change it? Distinguished lady, we are going to give an answer to such question. It is clear that predestination exists. Really this is the result of all the good and bad actions of our past existences. If one steals, they will steal from you, if one kills, they will kill you, etc., etc., etc. For example, I am now going to narrate to you now a very interesting case. It happened that a youth and 3 companions friends left for a trip from Mexico toward the United States. But they had a tragic event. The car in which they traveled hit another and there were counterblows with other vehicles that also circulated for the highway, with a balance of 2 dead and 2 wounded. When we investigated in the superior worlds we found evidence to what is the law of the predestination. For one of the dead, the first of them, his death was instantaneous, he perished in the precise moment of the clash. Another suffered burns of 3rd degree and after 20 days exhaled his last breath. The third was the driver of the car, which had a dislocation of the arm and a small wound in a leg only. And another, the fourth, suffered just a light wound in the head. We investigated especially to the first 3 and the result was the following. The person who perished first had lived in Mexico during the time of Don Porfirio Diaz. It is clear that it had been a rich, powerful person, a great farmer tyrant, that enjoyed running over the hard-working poor, tossing the horses on the peasants in the roads, etc., etc. The person who died from serious burns had made the error of tossing gasoline on the bodies of his siblings when they slept at night and then set them on fire. The one had been his very serious crime in his past existence and now perished in a car set on fire and died with burns of 3rd degree. As for the third one, he had made a youth suffer in his past existence. It so happened that in a gang of boys they had hit him and had dislocated an arm pulling it violently. Now he received the consequence during the accident. Therefore each one is born with their own destiny. The destiny could be modified doing many works of charity, being devoted to the good, practicing the works of mercy, etc., etc. It should remain clear the concrete fact that destiny could also be modified, because when an inferior law is transcended by a superior law, the law superior washes out the inferior law. Do good works so that you pay your debts. Chapter 6. Karma. 1. My friends, a law exists that it is called karma. This means in itself cause and effect, action and consequence. You should understand what it is the law of compensation. All that is done is necessary to pay it, because cause without effect doesn't exist, neither effect without cause. We have been given freedom, free will, and we can do what we want, but it is clear that we have to respond in the face of God for all our acts. Not only karma pay for the wrong that is made, but for the good that could be made but is not actually done. When one comes to this world one brings their own destination. Some are born in mattress of feathers and others in misfortune. If in our past existence we killed, they now kill us. If we hurt, they now hurt us. If we stole, they now steal from us, and with the stick with which we have measured others we are now measured. However, it is possible to modify our own destination, because when an inferior law is transcended for a superior law, the superior law washes out the inferior law. The leon of the law can be defeated with the scale. If we on a plate of the scale put our good works and on the other put the bad deeds, both plates will weigh equal or there will be a lack of balance. If the plate of the bad actions weighs more, we should put good works in the plate of the good actions with the purpose of inclining the scale to our favor, so we cancel karma. Do good actions so that you pay your debts. Remember that one does not only pay with pain, also one could pay by performing good deeds. Many people that suffer only remember their bitterness, wanting to remedy them, but they don't remember the other people's sufferings, neither they think ever of remedying the necessities of the neighbor. This selfish state of their existence has no use whatsoever, so the only thing that they really get is to increase their sufferings. If such people think of other people in serving their fellow man, in feeding the hungry, in giving a drink to the thirsty, in dressing the nude, in teaching the one that doesn't know, etc., 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 it is clear that they would put good actions in the plate of the cosmic scale in order to incline it in their favor. They would so alter their destiny and luck would come in their favor. That is, their necessities would be taken care of, but people are very selfish and for that reason they suffer. Nobody remembers God or their fellow man but when they are in desperation, and this is something that everybody have verified by themselves, so is humanity. 2. The good works of which you speak to us, should they be made in a disinterested manner or are they taken into our karmic account even if we do them with the interest of obtaining something in exchange? In a disinterested manner should always work, with infinite love for humanity. In this way we alter those bad causes that originated the bad effects. Don't forget that altering the cause changes the effect. Do you want to be healed? Heal others. Some of your relatives are in jail. Work for the freedom of others. Are you hungry? Share the bread with those that are worse than you, etc., etc., etc. 3. Teacher, could you tell me if all illnesses are karmic? Not all illnesses are karmic. The human machine could be damaged for multiple reasons. They could be of order karmic or simply accidental, that is all. 4. Teacher, being in meditation I could remember something of my past life, when I passed through Mexico in a trip to Acapulco, as you had told me. Can you explain to me if my meditation was correct or if it was a fantasy? By the form of the question as it was asked, I can evidence clearly that you still have the consciousness asleep, because if it were awake, the word fantasy would have been excluded from your question. What one knows well, it has nothing of fantastic. What one ignores, or that one can see only slightly, although being real, is taken as fantastic. To wake up the consciousness is vital when we try to investigate previous lives. It is clear that you were in the past reincarnation here in Mexico, that you accompanied me also in your past existence up to the puerto of Acapulco. This happened in the time of Don Porfirio Diaz, and it is now obvious that you repeated it in accordance with the law of recurrence. Everything happens again as it happened, everything repeats. So the great law of the karma works. 5. Master, in accordance with what you tell me I understand that am I very much asleep. However, these small memories that I have of this past life, as well as of another in Spanish lands and whose memories I have managed to bring forward, don't they indicate a small waking up of consciousness? Undoubtedly there has been a small waking up of your consciousness. The percentage has increased. The ordinary people have 3% of awakened consciousness, but we in this case we could evidence 10%, and that is a good deal. With difficulty we could find a person that has 100% of awakened consciousness. Be satisfied with having at least that percentage of consciousness higher that of all your fellow men. 6. During meditation I have had experiences of seeing that in my previous life I committed many errors, since I was a landowner that had a country property in Cuautla, Morelos, in which I had many employees, who I treated badly, frequently whipping them, committing adulteries and violations, until the revolution arrived in which I lost all my possessions. I joined in the revolution beside Pancho Villa, suffering hungers and all the horrors of the war, and although I died old and beside my family, from then so far I have suffered bitterness and experienced many troubles. I have thought that I am paying my karma. What could you say to me in this respect, Master? Distinguished brother, I am very glad that you remember your past existence. I have to inform you that in fact I knew you in your previous life. It is obvious that you are telling me the truth and nothing but the truth. As you also were in the army of the General Francisco Villa, it is natural that I could not avoid knowing you personally. That as the owner of a country property before the revolution you committed errors giving of lashes to your workers etc., 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 and thus contracted karma. That is obvious. Now you can understand why you have had so much sufferings in your current life. You made others suffer and now you have suffered. To others you made to work intensively and now you have been exploited by the owners in certain employment in which you have had to work in order to earn the bread of every day. So it is how we pay what we owe. Law is law and the law is kept. 7. Master, I want to relate to you an event that happened to me when I was 6 years of age. I saw in a dream that balls of fire fell on the earth and that the people ran and clamored to God hopelessly, as if it were the end of the world. Later on, having already grown up, I saw an illustrated Bible in which a square appeared exactly as I had dreamt it. Do you want to tell me if this was an announcement? Distinguished gentlemen, it is very pleasing to me to give an answer to your question. There is not doubt that as well as the human karma, the karma of the nations and of the world also exists. We are talking about karma and I believe that you understand me. Your vision corresponds to the world karma, which is condensed in many verses of the Bible and the Quran, as well as in a multitude of sacred books of the East and the West of the world. The wrong of the world is so big that it has already arrived to heaven, and it is obvious that this perverse civilization of vipers will be destroyed and no stone on stone will remain. A series of earthquakes has been unchained in all the regions of the earth, but this is not but the principle of the end. There will be atomic wars, hunger, and pestilence in the whole of the earth, and human beings will die by the million, as numerous as the sands of the sea, and there won't be any remedy. The abuse of the nuclear energy will be very serious. The day will arrive in which the decomposition of the atom in a chain will come, and then the seaquakes and earthquakes will intensify. Gigantic waves never seen before will whip the sandy beaches, and a strange and mysterious sound will come from the abysmal depths of the ocean. I want you to know, my friend, I want all my friends to understand that a world is coming, traveling through the infinite space, and that one day it will collide magnetically with this heart-stricken planet in which we live. What you have seen, what you could check in the Holy Bible, corresponds exactly to such cosmic event. It is necessary that you understand that the two planetary masses upon colliding magnetically will mix with each other, forming a new world. Then only there will be fire and water vapor, and there will be no traces left of all this perverse civilization. So will the apocalypse of St. John be verified. Later, little by little, between the chaotic waters of life, a new continent will arise, new lands, new skies, so that it takes place what has already been written in the Apocalypse and in the second epistle by Peter to the Romans. You have seen, therefore, something extraordinary, something that is nearly happening. Don't forget that already the scientists are informed on that world that travels, in fact bound for the orbit of our planet Earth. I have even heard say that they call it the Red Planet. They want to divert it by means of atomic explosions, but everything will be useless. That world will collide with ours, in fact in the year 2.500. So we'll finish this age of iron called Kali Yuga. It is a good thing that you know that this harrowing age began with the electrochemical cycle during the Greco-Roman culture, and that it will finish this cycle exactly the year 2.500. Thus is the karma of the nations, my friend. I invite you to continue the path of perfection, if you don't want to enter hell worlds with the lost, where one can only hear the crying and the cracking of the teeth. 7. With respect to the so-called Red Planet, I have learnt that a book of that name exists where the scientists narrate the fact that a planet is coming near the orbit of the Earth, and that a moment will arrive in which both planets collide, making a fusion of the masses, but that before colliding, in the process of approach, there will be a great amount of heat and radiation that will begin to sterilize plants, animals, and all kinds of life until drying off rivers and lakes, because of the lack of water generated by the proximity of the planet, acting through magnetic attraction. The places where there are big amounts of water will begin to escape from their riverbeds, causing big cataclysms, and that this will happen around the year 2400. What could you say in this respect? Our distinguished friend, what you say is very interesting. You can see that the scientists don't ignore now the future collision that awaits us. Allow me to differ as for the date. The White Lodge informed me that the said cosmic event, as I already said, will come to pass exactly in the year 2.500, At that time already the Tower of Babel, the cosmic rockets, will have been raised totally, then many people will be able to travel to the Moon, Mercury, Venus, and in general to all the planets of the solar system. With the planetary clash, the Tower of Babel will be fulminated and the Earth will become fire and vapor of water, that is all. 8. Also at the time of my childhood I had the vision of some ships that descended toward the Earth, glowing in the sky. Some very tall white men with deep gazes got off, and informed us that there was going to be a series of cataclysms that would finish humanity. Only a few people believed them, and these requested to be taken to their planet. They answered that they could only take those deserving it in accordance with their works. Then they began to make a selection by means of clairvoyance, and of hundreds of people they chose only 6 or 7, who in their judgment deserved it. When they were closing the doors of the ships, many sought to go up by force, but this was not possible and they left toward their planets. What could you say concerning this vision? Let me tell that these perceptions were marvelous. It is clear that they revealed to you what is coming. From the Earth the seed will be taken out. I want to refer to the selected human beings that will be supposed to serve in the future for the formation of the future 6th great race. It is clear that after the great cataclysm that is approaching, new lands will arise amongst the chaos, amongst the waters of life, and a new nation will live there. Now you will understand why the seed is supposed to be saved. This is essential, and there is not doubt that before the final cataclysm it will be taken in cosmic ships to other worlds of the infinite space. Later on, at its time and hour, when the Earth is again in conditions of being inhabited, such human seed will be brought back to this planet for the formation of the future race, and of this, our present humanity, will only remain the memories in the Akashic register of nature. Chapter 7. The Blackout of New York. My friends, tonight we are going to talk about a certain very interesting article that I have seen somewhere in a magazine, entitled, Doubts on the Blackout of New York, and next we will transcribe some parts of the mentioned article. Exactly at 5:28 in the afternoon of the 9th of November of 1965, the biggest technical and inexplicable flaw in history happened. At that time and at that date, 12 million New Yorkers suffered the consequences of a total interruption in the supply of electric power. But what the inhabitants from New York ignored was that, besides the city where they lived, there was other cities sunk in the darkness. Turn on the emergency lights, we are exposed to a robbery. Belonging to North American territory, Albany, Rochester, Boston, and Providence were dark. Located in Canada, Quebec and Ottawa suffered the same technical flaw. In an immense area of 207,184 square kilometers that comprise the states of Quebec, Ontario, Vermont, part from New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, no apparatus depending on electricity worked. 36 million people, that is to say, more than the population from Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay and Uruguay, together, remained in the dark. Elevators, traffic lights, radios, television and revolving doors stopped working. Electric ovens, electric stoves, refrigerators, blenders, toasters of bread, steel lungs, and even the milling machines of dentists became useless. In the streets some awful jams took place. The situation was aggravated even more for the fact that the vehicles that were left without gasoline were not able to fill up in the service stations. The electric pumps didn't work, and the automobiles were abandoned. In the subway stations there was almost 1 million people unable to use transport. I live 30 miles from here and my son is a sick person. We could not move. The city is congested with the blackout. The airplanes that were going to land or take off had difficulties upon going out momentarily the illumination of the airstrips. It is urgent that we land. Already we hardly have any fuel left. Anarchy went on increasing. There were accidental deaths, thieves, and people gone mad by the darkness. The situation was so serious and unforeseen that they had to suspend the sessions being celebrated in the Glass Palace of the United Nations in New York. As the duration of the blackout was prolonged, the more the high authorities were conscious that they faced a dangerous alteration of the public order. The latest reports indicate that panic and disorder increased in the streets. It is chaos. They only have light electric buildings like this that have their own electric plant. But there are only a few. But the truly serious is that the panic and the chaos are together at this moment in this immense zone of 207,184 square kilometers. The systems of radar don't work, they are blind. Any missile could cross our sky at this precise moment. We could not detect their presence. There is more, we could not even send one of our own missiles to intercept it, because the buttons of control with which the orders to take off are given depend on the electricity for their operation. This immense apparatus is useless, no good at all. Gentlemen, we are one of the most powerful countries of the earth. We spend thousands of millions of dollars in armaments every year, and in strengthening our systems of security, but in the face of a situation like this, we are impotent. A civilization as technical and powerful as ours has an Achilles heel, a great weakness. The electricity, you have all wondered. What uses the radar, the guided projectiles, the telegraph, the telephone, and the television? Absolutely none. Of course. The general is right. We could not transmit an order. We could not receive information. This is the crash of our military and industrial might. Everything is paralyzed. Gentlemen, please, a little good sense. It is not useless if I remind you that the government to which we all belong is totally aware of the terrible importance of electricity. In each electric power station there are big electronic brains and computers entrusted to watching over each centimeter of the big cables that drive the electric fluid. When one of the electronic brains discover, for example, that one of the cables is being overloaded by electricity and that there is a danger that they melt, the line 5 is in danger. Automatically that load is distributed between other branches of the system. The overload was distributed between the line 7 and 8. Likewise, the computers indicate when a great fuse has burned, to what line it belongs and the exact place of the mishap. It is the third cable of the Albany branch. The damage is localized between the towers 17B and 18B. We left immediately for that location. Even if a mishap were to happen in a zone that has not been captured by the electronic central stations, that zone is isolated from the rest so that it does not cause damages in other systems of electric conduction. We isolated the zone south of Montgomery and proceed to make the repair. Each switch, each fuse, and each connection are carefully revised each instant. I am sure the flaw will be corrected suddenly. We will have electricity again. The blackout has so far lasted an hour. Unfortunately, those optimists' calculations were not confirmed by reality. My son, my son. I didn't see him in this darkness. He left running out of the alley. The great blackout would last exactly 12 hours. Not a tenth of a second more. Frank, come, we already have light. The most precise electric chronograph, upon receiving the discharge of electricity, didn't have to have their pointers adjusted so that they continue indicating the time with great accuracy. It is showing exactly the time, that is. We should demand an investigation. In the same mysterious way that the light had been interrupted, the electricity began to flow along each cable. A blackout of the unusual duration that this had been, and that surprisingly had lasted 12 hours, caused uncertainty in a great sector of North America. That responsibilities be apportioned. Ordinary citizens, company men, and journalists requested an explanation of the government of United States on what had happened. Telegrams continue arriving, gentlemen. They demand of us that we clarify what happened. Up to here the words of the mentioned article. There is not doubt that a few extraterrestrial men were capable by themselves of paralyzing the whole electric system of New York and many other cities, as has been already said. We can see the fundamental difference between the man and the intellectual animal. It is obvious that everybody considers himself or herself as belonging to the human kingdom, or simply human, so as to be more clear. Diogenes with his lantern walked by the streets of Athens with a lit lamp looking for a man, and he never found him. Pilate introduces the Christ saying, ex homo, here is the man. How difficult it is to reach the human state. And however, all believe that they are men. The man is the true king of the creation and could perform marvels as impressive as those of the blackout from New York. We are sure that a half dozen of men could paralyze not only the electric system of the United States, but also all the activities of the whole world. Half dozen of authentic, legitimate, and true men could take the planet Earth without discharging a single shot and in question of minutes. 1. How could half dozen men possibly achieve this? Ardo, distinguished young lady, are you surprised by my words? It is necessary that you understand that the authentic man is the king of the creation. A single man would be able in question of seconds to disintegrate the planet Earth, convert it in fragments that would rotate around the sun. 2. Could this kind of man carry out so much without being self-realized? When are you going to understand me, distinguished lady? It is not possible that a man exists without self-realization. What happens is that you are thinking mistakenly, supposing that the animal intellectuals that populate the face of the earth are men. There is your error. Inside the intellectual animal surprising possibilities exist. The rational homunculus commonly called man is a chrysalis inside which man could be formed. Have you understood me? 3. And what could we do so that the man is formed inside that chrysalis? Distinguished young lady, in this elementary book I could not give you these explanations. Come to our Gnostic studies, study our books, read The Perfect Matrimony, The Mystery of the Golden Blossom, The Three Mountains, The Parsifal Unveiled, etc., etc., etc. For then, in accordance with what do you tell us, are they dangerous, the true men? Listen to me, noble lady, these legitimate men, in the most complete sense of the word, are really not as dangerous as you supposes. If they have wanted to break the planet Earth in pieces, they would have done so already. If they had wanted to invade and enslave us, they would have been able to do this many centuries ago. The authentic men don't murder, neither do they enslave, invade nations, or worlds. What it happens is that they visit us in order to help us. They are compassionate, and they will assist us in the supreme hour of the great cataclysm. They, after the tremendous catastrophe that awaits us, when the earth is in conditions of having life again, will establish a new civilization and a new culture in this planet, by then transformed. The intellectual animals are surprised by the concrete fact that these extraterrestrials do not really fit in our culture, and do not become subject to this degenerate and decrepit order of things. 5. With what you tell us, then true men don't exist in this planet. Are they all extraterrestrials? Distinguished young lady, listen to me. In our world there also are men, but it is necessary to look for them with the lantern of Diogenes. It is very difficult to find them, and however, you already see, all pretend to be men. 6. What is it the purpose that has for us to be an authentic man? Listen, please, distinguished young lady. From the chrysalis the butterfly leaves that blissful flies in the light of the sun, so also from the humanoid chrysalis could come out the authentic, legitimate, and true man. That is the original purpose of the divinity. If you take the opposite view, you would be against the purposes of God. He wants that each one of us becomes a king of creation, only so we could enter the kingdom of Melchizedek, only so we could go to paradise. For that reason Jesus the Christ came to the world, he to help us, so that each one of us becomes a king of nature. Now you will understand the reason why we should worry. 7. What do you think that actually caused the blackout of New York? With the utmost pleasure I will answer the gentleman who is listening to me. It was totally proven in an official way that the blackout of New York was caused by an extraterrestrial cosmic ship. As a result of this happening, the government of the United States created a scientific department with the evident purpose of investigating the matter of the flying saucers. It is necessary to remember that moments before the blackout, 2 flying saucers were pursued by 2 fighters from the U.S. Air Force, armed with very powerful missiles, but one of these strange devices was lost in the infinite space, while the other descended over the electric power plant of Syracuse. Afterwards came the blackout, and this was totally verified. The planes armed with missiles were useless. The best armaments from the US showed themselves to be useless. 8. What was the reason for the blackout, and what was the message? I will answer the gentleman with pleasure. Listen to me, if they had wanted to reduce New York to ashes they could have done so in a matter of seconds, but they are not perverse, they look at this race of intellectual animals with infinite compassion. They were pursued with airplanes, to destroy them, a beautiful welcome was not given to them, by the way, they were not received like siblings and, however, the only thing they did in order to demonstrate to the intellectual animal the state of unconsciousness and weakness in which he is, was to give a demonstration, paralyzing the whole electric system of New York, trying to make the rational beasts understand the shameful state in which they are. Already at this time, the rational animal, after such event should be studying himself, eliminating their passions and their bad habits, becoming purified and sanctified by means of repentance. 9. Do you consider that we, the terrestrial beings, have understood matters in this way? Our distinguished friend, it is obvious that this kingdom of animals has the consciousness asleep, and for such a reason it is far from understanding the teaching that has been given to them. The rational animals are not men, but they believe themselves to be omnipotent, powerful, super-civilized, super-developed, etc., etc., etc. 10. Could you explain to us scientifically what they did in order to produce the blackout? Oh, distinguished gentlemen, this is already a science of superior electrical type. I believe firmly that it is possible to deviate the electricity guiding the current in different form, altering the polarities, make inverse loads, and then it is clear that any city can remain in darkness. To study this in a careful manner, and then expose the teaching openly, would be the same as giving the weapons of man to the rational beasts. What would such beasts do with this type of knowledge? Put your hand on your heart and answer the question. Understood? Chapter 8. The Glacial Men. Well, my friends, we are now going to say something about the Glacial Men. It is urgent to understand the process of revolution of the axes of the Earth, which carry different glaciations. We have been told that before the past glaciations, the poles of the Earth were in the zone that today corresponds to the equatorial line, in such form that what was the equator became the poles and vice versa. This originated the sinking of Atlantis. It is clear that for such a reason the terrestrial geography changed. Vegetable coal has been found in the North Pole, and in Siberia, in the banks of the big rivers, they have discovered antediluvian animals that perished from the cold and ice. Such creatures, completely tropical, were surprised by the ice and the snow from a moment to another, and then they perished. The first human race that existed in the world lived in the North Polar Cap, in the secret island. Such region was tropical and was, as we have already said, in the equatorial zone, although later, due to the revolution of the axis of the Earth, it came to occupy the place that has at the moment. The first race that lived, then, in that region, was completely protoplasmatic. The bodies of the people were ductile, elastic, they could become very huge or very small at will, they didn't have the physical consistency of the current humanity. However, the people of such race were happy, they perceived the world and the things in an integral, complete form. They saw not only the merely physical, but could also see the soul and the spirit of all beings and things. The whole earth then had a beautiful blue intense color with their ocean and mountains. Although it seems incredible, the first race that existed in the world was of a beautiful black color. But it is a little difficult to understand by the current people that in the cheekbones of those people and in their faces in general, in spite of being of a race of color, a certain color and certain shade similar to that of the fire could be found. The system of reproduction was completely different to the present one. The human beings reproduced in a form very similar to that of the division of the organic cells. We already know that a cell divides in 2 and that the 2 divide in 4 and the 4 in 8, etc., etc. So also the organism of the father-mother, totally androgynous, because it was neither masculine nor feminine, but had both polarities at the same time, at a given moment it divided in 2. From the father-mother came off, so to say, the son, and this was a deeply religious event. To many people it will seem strange a race of androgynous, but it is obvious that the first human race was so. The people of the protoplasmatic race had marvelous temples, grandiose cities, and a very rich divine wisdom. At that time lived the angel Uriel, who had a human physical body. He wrote a grandiose book with Nordic runic characters and completed a beautiful mission teaching the humanity of that time. This protoplasmatic race is the Adam Solus of which the Bible speaks, that Adam from which the Eve of the Hebraic mythology had not yet been extracted. The centuries have passed, many millions of years, and that race, in spite of having actually transformed into other races, is still preserved in very original ways, and this is something that could surprise the auditory. I mean that not all the individuals of that race disappeared from the face of the earth. There is a certain group of such primeval people that still lives here on the earth. That mysterious group resides at the moment in a secret underground city located exactly in the North Pole. Those are the Glacial Men who, for the benefit of this unfortunate aching humanity, still exist. What is most astonishing is that these individuals or group corresponding to the first race, in spite of having been isolated in order to avoid all those organic transformations that gave origin to the millions of human beings that populate the face of the earth, have not only conserved their original purity, but also, and this is the most notable thing, achieved a unique, special, extraordinary metamorphosis. At the moment the members of such group have beautiful appearances of a human size similar to ours, perfect bodies of flesh and blood and great wisdom. They are really the live prototype of what all the people of the earth should be. There is not doubt that their underground city under the polar ice is formidable, marvelous, they possess a high ultramodern technology, they have mechanical apparatuses that correspond to a remote future, they are therefore advanced forward in time. It is clear that such glacial men will help us very especially in the future wars, through medicine, curing sick persons, healing the wounded, or through atomic and chemical sciences, trying to attend to the victims of the microbial bombs or of the nuclear energy, etc., etc., etc. They could help people and pass unnoticed in any place. 1. Why has that race been conserved without mixing with ours? With great pleasure I answer the gentleman. It is clear that the men of the first race went through many transformations before becoming Hyperborean. These souls, although they also were androgynous, reproduced by means of something that could be called budding. Such system is very similar to that of the budding of the plants. Any vegetable bud removed off its original trunk can be transformed into another plant. So also, of the body of those Hyperborean came off egg-shaped spores. Such spores became new independent organisms. They after the Hyperborean came the lemurs, hermaphrodite people in the flesh that reproduced by budding. From an ovary came off an egg that after certain time opened up in order to allow a creature come out that was fed by the chests of the father-mother. Such Lemurian race was divided into opposite sexes after many millions of years. That event is symbolized in the Bible with the allegory in which Jehovah extracts Eve from one of Adam's ribs. It is clear that after having divided the human beings into opposite sexes, reproduction was carried out by means of sexual cooperation. That is the system that we have at the moment. As you have been listening, the primitive original race became other races through time and the centuries. It went through incessant metamorphosis, evolutions and involutions, etc., etc., etc. But there was certain group, I repeat, of that primitive original race, that withdrew from those successive metamorphoses, and that was conserved pure and vestal until our days. That is the Glacial Men. 2. Is it possible to visit those Glacial Men? Already in a past conference appearing in this book I said that it is possible to put the physical body inside the fourth dimension. We then taught the key. We explained that each individual has his particular mother nature and that if we concentrated deeply in her in a few instants of after becoming sleepy, requesting and begging her the favor of putting our physical body inside the unknown dimension, she would help us in this sense. We then affirmed that only was left to get up carefully from our bed, conserving the sleep as if we were somnambulistic, but of course with the consciousness very awake. In these circumstances, floating in the surrounding environment of the fourth dimension, we could visit the city of the Glacial Men. It is clear that what is needed is faith, much faith, love for the Christ, true yearning. Only so is victory possible. 3. Can we visit them without their permission? Kind young lady, permit me to tell you in emphatic tone that for the unworthy all doors are close, with exception of one, that of repentance. Chapter 9. Mysterious disappearances. My friends, many mysterious disappearances have been manifested starting in the last century, and this is something that we should study. In the last century, the spectacular case of the disappearance of the whole of a marine crew was recorded. Certain ship that navigated in the direction of Spain was found in the high seas in perfect state, loaded with jewels, goods and things of great value, but without the crew. Such ship was completely deserted, nothing was ever known about their crew. Those that found this ship did not detect symptoms of violence, the possibility of a mutiny on board was therefore discarded. The kitchen utensils, the jewels, the wines were untouched, making impossible the possibility of any act of piracy. This invites us to think, my dear friends, what happened to that people? Who abducted them in the middle of the high seas? There is here a tremendous mystery that until now has not been solved. In the past century, some armies disappeared in the middle of a field of battle. Who took them? Mystery, mystery. In the times of Napoleon Bonaparte, a great ambassador disappeared in presence of the domestic staff. What mysterious hand did snatch him? Tony Maldonado, the husband of one of my daughters, saw a cadet in Guatemala that upon crossing the street disappeared instantly, submerging inside the unknown dimension. What hand did snatch him? Airplanes full of passengers and crew have disappeared in the middle of a flight without leaving the least trace. Who have had them snatched? Meditating carefully, we arrived at the logical conclusion that in these precise moments, in the test tubes of nature, experiments are being made for the creation of the future great race that will live in the transformed earth of tomorrow, after the gigantic cataclysm that is approaching. It is evident that the most select seed of the human species is being taken out from the earth and led to other planets of the infinite space. There is no the least doubt that the extraterrestrials carry out this magnificent work. It is evident that that future race is already being created. Remember, my friends, that the first race was that of the Glacial Men, the second, that of the Hyperborean, the third, that of the Lemurs, the fourth, that of the Atlanteans, the fifth, ours, but already, I repeat, the future sixth great race is being created. There will also be a seventh that will be the last in our world, but that is still farther, we talk about the sixth. Extraterrestrial women have come and will continue coming with the purpose of being fecundated. Some of our men will be led to other worlds in order to fecundate and later will be brought back. It is appropriate to remember now an unusual case in Brazil. A cosmic ship descended in a solitary field. An unfortunate peasant that was walking near was put by force inside the UFO. His blood was extracted, and it was analyzed. The poor peasant was studied in detail, and later, an extraterrestrial woman similar to a Chinese, but with blonde hair, came to him and sexually seduced him. That good man had, therefore, sexual relationships with her. Then he was taken out from the ship, and this vessel then left toward the infinite space. There is not doubt that that woman came in order to be fecundated. The human terrestrial seed was taken. Objective? Achieving certain very special mixture. It is obvious that many other inhabitants of the earth have had similar experiences. Some have preferred to stay silent, fearing to be made fun by their fellow men. Analyzing all this carefully, we can verify that the extraterrestrials are making now very special experiments, whose final results will appear in the transformed earth of tomorrow, much later after the planetary collision that will happen in the year 2.500. The human seed will be brought back to Earth. The sixth race will be, therefore, formed from very important mixtures. I understand that the people of the sixth race will be very beautiful and of smaller size. It is obvious that they will be the product of the interbreeding between terrestrials and extraterrestrials. It is not, therefore, strange that many people disappear at these times. As the years go lapsing, these mysterious disappearances will increase notably. Distinguished friends, prepare yourselves. Don't forget that we live in extraordinary times. It would not be odd that any one of you were also to be transported to any planet of the infinite space. How is it that, if they already have practically invaded us, that they have not given their message in a general form to the humanity? Why the mystery? Our distinguished friend, I will with much gladness give an answer to your question. Let me inform you that sometime in the future these extraterrestrials will speak through the different satellites that Russia and United States have in orbit around the Earth, then they will transmit for us delicious cosmic melodies. We should mention that at this moment there are in orbit cosmic laboratories manned by extraterrestrials where they register our ideas, customs, language, etc., etc., etc. The Sibyl of Prague several centuries ago prophesied all these things, and even asserted in emphatic form that in a not distant day the voice of God would be listened to in the whole roundness of the earth, the verb, say, of the extraterrestrials, and every knee would bend in order to hear the word come from on high. There is not doubt that that instant approaches, and we then will know the message of the extraterrestrials. Before that there will be unusual events. Some North American or Russian rockets will be carried off to other worlds. It also is true that the astronauts of the Tower from Babel will see extraterrestrial cosmic ships, but they will keep silent. The arrogance of the scientists of this tower is terrible. They want to be the masters of the whole infinite, but they will be fulminated in their day and in their hour. Let me say to the gentleman that has asked the question that the Earth has not been invaded by extraterrestrials, they know how to respect the free will of our fellow man, but for the good of the great cause, certain people are taken to other planets with purposes evidently scientific, but these people are respected also receiving magnificent treatment. 2. Dear Master, could you tell us if these extraterrestrial beings are of the same human nature as us? Our dear friend, your question is quite interesting. Let me tell you with infinite grief that we are still not truly humans in the most complete sense of the word. It is obvious that today we are just intellectual humanoids, and this is different. The extraterrestrials that visit us are men in the most complete sense of the word, true humans, people that have already conquered the infinite space. There is the difference. Those people are endowed with a great wisdom, they possess knowledge we do not nearly suspect, they are vastly superiors to us, that is all. 3. Could you tell us, Master, if these extraterrestrial men live in the planet Mars or in Venus? Our noble lady, I should say it to you that the UFOs comes from different planets of the infinite. There is not doubt that in Venus a humanity of very superior type exists and that in Mars also there are inhabitants, although the men of modern science persist in denying them. The apparatuses of terrestrial photos sent in artificial satellites in no way could inform us on the existent life in planets like Venus and Mars. But I can assure you that in the future the Earthlings will be able to verify, by direct experience, the actual existence of the Venusians and Martian people. Chapter 10. The Fishmen. My friends, in our meeting of today we are going to chat a little about the fishmen. This sound to you a little strange, does it not? Above all, I want to remind you that we, the Gnostics, have methods and special means in order to investigate all this in a form, shall we say, spiritual. Have you ever heard about the unfolding? The soul of any person could unfold, that is to say, leave the body and move to any corner of the universe with the purpose of seeing, hearing, touching and feeling things in which we are interested. Let me say to you that we know the secret, the keys, in order to carry out such incorporeal trips. I always foresaw that fishmen existed in the bottom of the oceans, intelligent creatures, and it even appears to me that this is related in some way to the famous Oan's fish of the Chaldeans. I don't want to remove from this fish other, deeper allegories, I only want to emphasize the idea that such symbol also belongs together with the deep mystery of the fishmen. Leaving this small preamble, we come to the point, to the facts. In deep meditation my priestess wife and I resolved to take a psychic, spiritual trip with the purpose of investigating everything related to the fishmen. It is obvious that we achieved this and that upon confronting the perceptions of a metaphysical type they evidently gave identical results. Outside of our dense forms, our souls submerged deeply in the Atlantic Ocean, very far from all Earth. I on behalf of the truth should say that we certainly entered in direct contact with the fishmen. If you ask me what class of figure have these men, one would have to answer clearly that they possess the form of fish with sizes very similar to that of any human person, some bigger, some smaller, others average size, etc., etc., etc. I believe that you don't yet see very clearly, at this point, this account of the fishmen, continue with me with patience. Please, listen to my story. We found at the bottom of the ocean the city of the fishmen. Enigma? I fear that if you do not pay attention you won't understand my story. It is obvious that the mentioned city is not of a physical type, neither it corresponds to the world of 3-dimension, it is a population located in the unknown dimension. The houses, the temples, the stores, the restaurants, streets and things, etc. have been created by the fishmen in the 4th dimension, in what we could call etheric space. The intellectual animals that live in the physical world have degenerated their sight so much that they really are no longer able to see the 4th dimension, but the fishmen are different, they possess the etheric sight and because of this, the unknown dimension is for them as familiar as the air that we breathe or the foods that we eat. Certainly those creatures have not degenerated and because of this it is clear that they possess the etheric sight. On behalf of the truth we must say that they live simultaneously in the physical world and in the etheric region. It is clear that the soul of a fish man knows that he has the body of a fish, however, since they also live in the unknown dimension, they don't ignore that they are men, being able to live as such in the 4th dimension at the same time that they move simultaneously between the waters like simple fish. There is, therefore, a double life in them, the first as fish, the second as men, but they combine both, they are processed in simultaneous and harmonious form, beautifully coordinate. A very wise king governs these creatures, a very venerable fishman. It is clear that that old king is loved by all his subjects and that he does not need of armies neither of police in order to be obeyed. He is an ineffable being of the solar dynasties. Upon making the exposition that you, my friends, are listening to, I want that for at least a moment in your life you identify with this class of tridimensional and tetradimensional creatures. I speaking in an integral manner, intimately coordinating the physical with the metaphysical. My priestess wife passed the threshold of one of those etheric stores of the mysterious town located in the unknown dimension. I observed her, but I didn't enter. She saw something, or looked at it in the depth. Upon leaving I asked her about this. The answer was, I saw a group of fishmen sitting down at the tables of a beautiful restaurant. They chatted on diverse topics, she explained. Souls of fishmen live really like men in an etheric city, invisible for the degenerated people of our world, but visible for the beautiful senses of those creatures. However, it is astonishing that they at the same time have physical bodies and of fish. You see this strange combination of men and fish. 1. Do these beings have the face of men or of fish? Ah, distinguished young lady, let me answer you, that in that etheric world of which I am speaking, these creatures have physiognomies of men, but in the world merely physical, material, their face and their whole body is of fish. 2. Should we understand, Master, that these men have a form which is exclusively that of a fish or do they have human aspect? Ask my good friend, with the greatest pleasure I will give an answer to your question. In the merely physical, material world, these creatures possess exclusively a fish form, anyone could confuse them, they are fortunately very intelligent and it is for such a reason clear that they would never be allowed to be fished. I repeat, only in the unknown dimension they assumes human forms, it is precisely in the 4th dimension where they live the life of men, it is not exaggerated to say that they also have their business, etc., etc., etc. It is clear that all this seems impossible to anyone who has not deepened in our studies. 3. And are they happy, Master, living that double life? Oh, my dear lady, I could assure to you that they are infinitely more blissful than we. They don't have an inner eye, sinner, they are pure in thought, word and toil, in them is the right feeling and the right doing. We find in them the just thought, the just word, the just action. For dear Master, could you tell us whether these men are related to the Glacial Men, the Blue Men and the extraterrestrials that you have mentioned to us before? Ah, noble gentleman, great friend, let me inform you that the fishmen, since they are free of original sin, are in intimate relationship with the Glacial Men, with the men that come from the blue galaxy, and with the humanities of other worlds. I want to tell you with great emphasis that the fishmen used to live in the deep seas of the planet Venus. They were brought to Earth in cosmic ships by the Venusians and deposited in the bottom of our ocean. But very soon they will be rescued by the spacemen from Venus and return to their world of origin. I will say to you that this event will happen before the Third World War. It is evident that the nuclear explosions will contaminate the waters and will put their lives in danger if they are not returned to the marine waters of the planet Venus. With the sixth sense I went ahead on time in order to see such event, and I then perceived amphibious ships of Venusian origin, submerging in the Atlantic Ocean in order to rescue the fishmen. To my hearings arrived in that instant psychic laments, cry and anguish of those mysterious creatures. They were taken far from this planet Earth because this race of animals intellectuals that populate the face of our world are not really prepared to understand so sublime beings. In other words, I should say that we don't deserve them. They have some very strange objects in the unknown dimension. I contemplated something similar to a circle, a kind of a mysterious bracelet that I frankly could not understand. One of them, one of those marvelous men, addressing my priestess wife, said the following: "Blissful you are, always near the master." It is obvious that I became very moved. In their etheric, metaphysical town, the solemn peace is breathed in the big oceanic depths. One feels clean, pure, infinitely happy. How far the people are of understanding all this? My friends, after telling you this story, I am not sure that you have understood me. I know that you have the consciousness completely asleep, and for this it is obvious that you are very far from capturing the deep significance of my story. 5. In the unknown dimension, when they assume the figure of men, don't they live in the water? Our distinguished young lady, I should tell you, or better repeat it, that the beautiful city of these fishmen, seen by us in psychic form, is located in the deep bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Therefore, the atmosphere in which these beings move is essentially etheric and aquatic. 6. Why were they brought from the planet Venus in order to live here on Earth? Our distinguished lady, our brothers and sisters from space always want the best for us, and it is obvious that they were brought for our own good. They were placed in the bottom of the sea so that they help and instruct us one day. Unfortunately, the people of our world have degenerated so much, and for that reason have not reached the psychic contact with so beautiful creatures. Thus humanity lost such a beautiful opportunity. People not even remotely so far suspect what they lost. Many could have entered that species of delight by the doors of reincarnation. In a short time, the seas will show many secret things to the people, and a kind of extraordinary and very intelligent fish will be discovered. But I want you to listen to me, don't confuse yourselves. Those won't be the fishmen, because those, as I already said, will be returned to Venus, to the deep seas of the planet. 7. Could another class of men exist such as these in the animal, vegetable or mineral kingdoms, master? Well, my friend, let me tell you that the fishmen are an exception, and for certain brought from the planet Venus. Outside of this kind of so singular creatures, we know that in our world the stones are stones, the plants are what they are, and the animals, including those which have intellect, are what they are and nothing else but what they are. The fishmen are men in the most complete sense of the word, because they have inside the being, because they have it incarnated and they know that they have it. When I was 7 years old, on an occasion I dreamt about a church of a small town where close by there were a circus, fairs, and stalls where they sold typical things of the locality. Everything was clearly visualized, to such a degree that I spoke with a lady that went dressed in red. Later on I would get lost amongst the people and then would leave. 5 years later I visited that town and saw exactly the scene that I had dreamt, but I didn't realize this until the lady dressed in red spoke to me. I was surprised that after so much time everything happened to me as I had dreamt it. Master, could you explain to me what is this type of phenomenon due to? With pleasure. I am going to give an answer to this question. Allow me the freedom of speaking in a very simple form, because this is an elementary book for applicants to gnosis. It is unquestionable that while we dream, the soul escapes from the physical body in order to go to different places of the world or of the infinite space. Once we have explained this, it will be easy now to understand that the gentleman asking the question, outside of his dense body, traveled to the place that several years later he recognized physically. It is clear and it is obvious and evident that he lived in advance the event that was going to take place later on in the physical world. This means that during dreams one can live events before these happen. There is not doubt that the person that he recognized after several years and in the mentioned place had already been in contact with him, in fact, during the same hours of the dream. These are things that are ignored by those people that are devoted to the parapsychology. too, a long time ago an aunt told me that, when she was owner of a grocery store, a very rainy night a very mysterious gentleman arrived, whose face could not be seen since he was wearing a hat of very wide brim and was covered by a black coat of very big and lifted up lapels. The said gentleman requested a favor, that she kept for him a small coffer, because he was not going to his home at the moment, and it was raining. He would pick it up the following day in the morning. My aunt took the coffer and put it in the bookcase of the store. Upon leaving again the mysterious gentleman, she observed that his feet could not be seen, and that he momentarily disappeared like a shade in the night. Immediately she felt a chill and got a hunch that it was not anything normal all that was happening to her. The following day, she told other people of such event. In the following 1.5 years the gentleman didn't come to pick up the coffer, and therefore people that knew about the case recommended to her that she opens it because it could contain the body of a deceased. So she did that, and upon opening it they realized that it indeed contained the skeleton of a dead person, but in the bottom it had a not worthless amount of gold coins. Given the state of nerves in which she was, she decided to give the coffer to other people, since she didn't want to know any more about the matter. Would you be so kind, Master, to explain to us something about this event? With the greatest pleasure. I am going to give an explanation on this matter. Certainly the character so strangely dressed that came to that place was, without any doubt, a discarnate entity, the ghost of a deceased. The concrete fact is obvious, and it stands out, that the ghost abandoned the unknown dimension for an instant in order to enter this physical world of 3 dimensions. It is unquestionable that such ghost gave that coffer to the person of the story. Alas, this lady was not able to understand the fact in itself, and, full of panic, she gave to others what had been destined for herself. You see what fear means. This lady could have improved her situation with so fine a fortune. Unhappily, she didn't know how to take advantage of the beautiful opportunity that presented to her. It is interesting to understand that the said ghost, besides materializing in the physical world, could make what we would call a transportation, moving such coffer from the place where it was until he put it in hands of that lady. This type of materialization is really sensational. 3 then, Master, shouldn't one take advantage of these opportunities when they come, in spite of being afraid? Distinguished lady, let me say to you that fear is something loathsome. The nations arm for fear, they embark upon the war for fear, the men put on gun in the belt for fear and murder for fear. Why fear? We all have to die sooner or later. The best that lady of the story could have done was return the bones to the vault and take advantage of the money, doing many works of charity and also benefiting herself. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in the world many unusual, strange, metaphysical events do happen. Somebody told me a story concerning a very interesting case. In a party, a certain lady was remarkable for her immense joy, because she was obviously highlighted amongst all the guests for her jovial character and physical beauty. Many youths danced with her until 3 of the morning, an hour in which the lady manifested to be very cold. One of her admirers lent her a coat, so that she was sheltered. Then, like a courteous gentleman, he offered to accompany her to her house. The lady didn't decline such gentlemanly attention and left, then, the room of the banquet. In a speedy automobile, the lady, accompanied by the youth that offered his company and by some other male friends of his, arrived at the door of her house. The young men said goodbye to the aforesaid lady when she went into her house. The following day, the owner of the garment lent to the lady, together with his friends, knocked at the door of that mansion with the evident purpose of recovering the garment. An old woman opened the door and asked, "What do you want, gentlemen?" "We have come," one of the young men said, "for a coat that I lent last night to the young lady so-and-so." The old lady said, "If you want that garment you should be going to look for it in the vault. You will find it on the tomb of my granddaughter. She was the lady that danced with you last night. She died many years ago." The alarmed youth went certainly to the vault. They looked for the sepulchre of the lady and found it, and on it they found the coat. See, my friends, an extraordinary case of materialization. Above all, I want you to listen to my explanation, only so you will understand how this phenomenon of metaphysical type took place. I want you to know that upon dying 3 things go to the sepulchre. First, the physical body, second, the vital core of our organism, a kind of an etheric double that decomposes slowly next to the tomb, third, the personality. This last is energy, it remains in the sepulchre, but sometimes it leaves from it and experiences the luxury of walking by diverse places. In accordance with the story, I believe that you will understand that became visible in the dance. That ghost that borrowed the garment was the personality of the dead. Only so could explain us the reason why the garment was found precisely on the sepulchral grave. For the master, was that ghost the soul of the dead? How should I understand this phenomenon? Ah, distinguished young lady, do not be confused by what I am saying, listen to me with trust. The soul of the dead could not be put in a sepulchre. What did appear was the personality of the deceased, and this is quite different. There is not doubt that the personality little by little is disintegrating until it disappears or annihilates. The soul is something different, it is something divine, that could not be contained inside a sepulchre. 5. We find these stories very interesting. Master, we would like that you tell us another event of appearances beyond the grave. Ah, with the greatest pleasure I am going to relate to the Honourable Assembly another case, by the way, very interesting. This time is a lady that took a taxi at midnight in the city of Guatemala. Upon asking the chauffeur the address of the home to where he should take her, she gave some directions that happened to coincide exactly with the vault of the city. A bit puzzled, the chauffeur left the lady exactly at the door used for funerals, demanding beforehand the corresponding payment for the value of the transport. The lady then told him that at that instant she didn't have any money, but that she would give him a golden object by means of which she guaranteed payment. She then asked him to go to her house located in the such street, such number, etc., etc., the following day, knock on the door of that house and then give the chain to her mother claiming the money, value of the fare. A little confused, the chauffeur went away from the funeral door, and early the following day he arrived at the house indicated by the lady, from which a lady of advancing age appeared, asking him what was it that he wanted. The chauffeur, taking out the chain from the bag where he was carrying it, showed it to the lady, telling her the story, and requesting that was given the money, value of the passage of her daughter so-and-so. Upon seeing that golden chain with its beautiful locket, the mother recognized the golden garment with which their dead daughter had been buried some time ago. It was clear, the old lady turned pale, full of infinite terror. Later on the chauffeur was invited to go into her home with the purpose to try to identify her daughter. With this object she showed him an enlarged picture that beautifully framed was in the living room. It is clear that the chauffeur recognized her immediately. There is not doubt that this mother remained in a state of awful confusion, and it is even said that the chauffeur later saw her again in another part of the city. This is another case of materialization of the personality or ex-personality of a deceased. In ancient times there was more understanding by the people, then they buried the deceased together with all their belonging, including food, drinks and other kinds of things with which the deceased was familiarized in life. In this way the personality of the deceased feels in his own environment, as if he were in his own house. We should feel charity towards the dead and also understand with love those apparitions at the vault. We should take them flowers, love, prayers, and also those foods that in life they were accustomed to eat. We here in Mexico gives the example on the Day of the Dead, November 2nd, putting the food and drinks on the sepulchres that they so much have enjoyed. I wish that many people of other countries followed this example. When I was a boy I used to hear from my parents and family the stories of the very well-known Llorona, weeping woman Ed, who showed herself periodically to the men that crossed the plains or solitary places in the course of the night. These men were seduced by a beautiful woman that waylaid them and incited them to love, but upon they corresponding to the invitation, she let loose a very penetrating laughter, hearing later a very bitter cry that froze the blood, and finally disappearing like a white veil that got lost in the shades of the night. Could you explain to us this manifestation, Master, that is very well known in many places of several countries? Our distinguished friend, believe me, I feel great pleasure in answering your request. I find your story quite interesting. Certainly I should say to you that this story of the Llorona is a popular legend in all the countries of the world. I don't want to underestimate the word legend. Really, such term is used as a vehicle for many traditions that sometimes become part of the actual history. In the stories there is many times more realities than what the people suppose. After this small necessary description in order to clarify terms, I will tell that there is no place in the planet Earth where it has not been heard speak at some time of the Llorona. In my role as an occultist researcher, I will tell you the following. In a certain occasion, over there in a town, the people informed me about the unusual appearances of the Llorona at the bank of a creek. It is worth the effort to tell you with a certain emphasis that I propose to investigate the case personally. For such purpose, I was supposed to go to the place of reference, to the place indicated by the people, in the high hours of the night. It is obvious that one should make a rigorous investigation, and that is known by any esotericist, and I proceeded in this manner. The aforesaid metaphysical woman came to me, that is clear. I interrogated her in the following form: "Are you that Llorona?" "Yes, I am," she responded, and then tried to give her famous cries or painful screams with those so well-known exclamations, "Oh, my children! Oh, my children!" But I was in guard, and of course she did not succeed in frightening me, because of the saying, "Worn soldier doesn't die in war." "Are you a witch?" I asked her. "Yes, I am," she answered. "Do you belong to the Society of the Witchcraft?" "Yes," she answered again. The woman was dressed all in black, and a long mantle of the same color wrapped her body from head to feet. She used sandals and was like a shade between the same shades of the night. The face of that apparition was pale, her eyes black and penetrating, her nose small, her lips more or less vulgar. Feeling that she had been vanquished, that ghost of the night went away by the side of the creek, walking slowly, slowly. 2. Then this woman was only a ghost? Ah, dear young lady, allow me to say to you that in certain sense yes, that was so, but she had a tremendous reality. She was certainly a witch of those that concur to the Society of the Witchcraft of Salamanca, Spain. 3. I am going to relate a case that happened in my childhood, when there was not yet electric light. We lived in a house that had a great patio. Therefore, in order to light it we used candles and paraffin lamps. The rooms were built around the patio, and at an end, a great kitchen in colonial style, where there were big wooden furniture pieces called trasteros. We also had several kinds of animals, such as pigs, birds, cows, etc. Very often animals were stolen, and everybody was always expecting this. On a certain night we heard a great noise in the kitchen and the hullabaloo of some pigs and hens as if they had been taken out. Also we heard the noise made by one of the trasteros as it collapsed, breaking all the pottery that it had inside. The roar was so big that all the members of the family woke up, coming out half-dressed, to see what was going on, with candles and lamps in their hands. Upon arriving at the kitchen and check where the animals were, we were surprised by the fact that everything was calm and the kitchen utensils in perfect state, without having moved anything. This same situation was repeated not less than 5 times. We decided then not to pay more attention to these happenings. Automatically such phenomenon disappeared, which at the beginning frightened us, saying even that this kitchen was bewitched. Would the master be so kind to give us an explanation in this respect? Ah, quite interesting your question, and believe me that I feel a great happiness upon answering you. These are the cases of bewitched houses and of ghostly very well-known facts from the remote antiquity. It is clear that in these happenings creatures of the beyond intervene, spectra, spirits of the dead, etc. Clearly, it stands out with whole meridian clarity the existence of psychic factors able to produce physical phenomenon. It is unquestionable that effects without cause don't exist, neither causes without effects. Obviously the ghost of any dead person produces such phenomenon. The etheric double of that trastero or piece of furniture where the china was kept fell down, certainly producing such sounds in the night. This doesn't mean that the merely physical part of the mentioned piece of furniture was thrown on the floor. It is good that you understand, distinguished gentlemen, that any physical object has a double of the etheric type, including as we can see the mentioned trastero of the kitchen. Now you will understand better what was it that fell and the origin of the sound of plates, pots and other clay or porcelain that was destroyed. The ghost of the dead acted on the etheric part of the physical piece of furniture, and phenomenon similar to the merely material took place. Since olden times it was known that in such places there were occult treasures, and some people looked for them eagerly until they came across them. for it pleases me very much to verify or reaffirm your answer, in connection with the fact that indeed in that place 2 pots with golden coins were found, and were kept by the bricklayers when that kitchen was demolished. Many comments in this respect were made, and some people agreed that this was the reason why several supernatural cases had been observed. My friends, I know about a similar and very extraordinary case. Inside an old chamber of an old elegant large house, where some people of certain age lived patriarchal, multiple noises could be heard in the deep silence of the night. A beautiful lady was accustomed to cover herself totally with her covers or serapes from head to foot when she was in bed. One night she was asleep tranquil in her bed when she heard the mentioned metaphysical sounds inside her bedroom. As in all these cases, such innocent protection such as the covers or serapes do not always work well. This lady tells that at some time she managed to touch with her feet the body of a ghost that seemed to be of a boy. That woman says that the metaphysical infant slowly went pulling the serapes until leaving her totally without them, and then placed them all together on certain place of the bedroom. Time passed, and much later, when that family left the house, other people that went to live there had to make some repairs to the house, and in the exact place where the ghost had placed the serapes or covers a very rich treasure of solid gold was found, somewhat deep in the ground. We are going to proceed now with another very similar and quite interesting story. I remember the case of a gentleman of a certain age who had strange dreams. He was taken in vision, at night, to a fallow land. The one who guided him, indicating a certain barren place, in emphatic form told him, "Here I buried a great treasure and it is for you, you could take it out, all that you need to do is to scratch, to make a hole. I am going to put a sign here so that you come tomorrow. Where you find the sign, it is the place where the fortune is." The gentleman of such a story tells that the ghost that drove him there in his dreams put 2 bones of a dead person in the form of a cross, and then, putting much emphasis, he repeated, "This is the sign, don't you forget it." The gentleman says that when he woke up from such a strange dream, very early before breakfast, he went to the place pointed out, and certainly he found there the 2 bones in the form of a cross. Then, taking them with his 2 hands, he said, "On behalf of God or on behalf of the devil, whatever it may be, here goes, so be it." Then he threw the 2 bones a long way away and full of great indignation returned to his house. It is obvious that that good man lost a rich fortune. 5. In connection with the previous stories, I want to narrate another case in which several people observed a white dog that came out from behind an apple shrub and walked approximately about 100 meters, getting lost in an ostensible hole, giving some curiosity and to others great fear, because during the day there was no such hole. One of those who had observed the phenomenon decided to shoot the dog that walked night after night, and big it was their surprise upon seeing that the bullets didn't kill it, continuing his normal journey until getting lost in the above-mentioned hole. After getting together the people that had seen the dog, somebody thought that in the hole where that white dog got lost could be the indication that in it there was a treasure. When they dug, they indeed found a respectable fortune, which they divided into equal parts. Could you explain this story, Master? My good friend, your story is magnificent and deserves a good explanation. I want you to know that all these hidden treasures are guarded by the gnomes of nature. People give all these elemental creatures diverse names. Some people simply characterize them as goblins, and that is all. There is not doubt that such elementals are the faithful guardians of the so rich mineral fortunes occult under the epidermis of the earth. The dog ghost of the story was simply a gnome entrusted to watch over the treasure. Normally those metaphysical creatures have the form of small dwarfs. They seem rather venerable old men, but they could assume any figure, including that of the mentioned dog. Now you will understand everything related with that phenomenon. Dear friends, this kind of story is very interesting. It is however good to know that the best treasure is the spirit. Let us not allow ourselves to be overtaken by ambition, greed, the desire of fortune, etc., etc., etc. We study all these different psychic aspects because they are quite interesting, but of course not we are devoted to look for hidden fortunes, that is all. A long time ago, in the village where we lived, the house in which we resided gave us a taste of some rare phenomena such as the following. Provisions of all type were distributed from this place, since it was a kind of store of the town, where everything could be found, and provisions were lent to the very poor people that could not pay daily what they consumed. They were granted some vouchers that they were supposed to pay every week, but because the men in their majority drank too much alcohol, they drank the money that they earned, occasioning a drama for their families, since they in many cases owed several weeks of payment. One of the debtors that refused flatly to pay had the reputation of practicing acts of witchcraft, and in some occasions was proud of this and threatened that they should not collect any more because they were going to lament it. A certain night, he stopped at a distance of about 100 meters from the store, and blows on walls and roofs were begun to be heard in our house, that was next to the store, as if there was a great multitude throwing enormous stones with much force, to such a degree that the house seemed to be on the verge of being knocked down. One of the relatives dared to lean out of a window, and he could only see that sorcerer, who maintained a fixed look toward the house, and it seemed that fire was coming out of his eyes, while with an ironic smile and expansive gestures pronounced some opaque words. After a while, it seemed that a great amount of stones was accumulating, and that it was going to be impossible to leave the house. When this individual left, the noises ceased and everything remained in peacefulness and calm. We later on went out to see what had happened, finding out that there not even a grain of sand. This caused a definite fright amongst the people of the town, becoming afraid of this man.
Could the master explain to us what was it that really happened?
With much pleasure I will give an answer to your question. Obviously we are talking about a black magician, a fellow with dangerous powers. Without doubt he pronounced magic words by means of which he controlled certain tenebrous entities. It is clear that the stones phenomenon frightened the people. The unknown ghosts could certainly throw such stones. These stones in itself traveled inside the fourth dimension, and they could even become momentarily visible for then disappear and return to the original starting point. You should not forget that in the fourth dimension everything returns to their starting point. If a ghost there throws a stone with the purpose of making it visible in the physical world, it returns later to the place from where it came. It comes to me now the memory of a case of certain gentleman, whose name I will not mention, also a magician, that is obvious. He always put in his bag a 50-cent coin, and with such coin he could spend all night drinking from tavern to tavern. People from around that place say that that fellow went into a shop, requested beer, bread, and all that he wanted, and later paid with the coin. The odd thing was that at a given instant, at the moment of leaving the establishment, he called to his coin pronouncing a feminine name, XX, that at this moment I don't remember, and the coin returned to his bag again. This gentleman of long ago was a black magician that only needed a coin in order to be able to live. There is not doubt that he possessed terrible psychic powers and that he could order around certain demons that obeyed him. 2. In the town where we lived there was an old man that used to tell me all the rare events that had happened in the surroundings. In one occasion he related to me the case of a peasant that had brought a lawsuit against one of the guard-rivers of the place, and such case ended up in a machete fight, the guard-river dying, the body of which the peasant had hidden among the reeds that were in the river. Some time later, the neighbors got to know that the peasant, according to what he said, was dragged every day by the dead man in the middle of the night, and that some people came to hear that he dialogued with the deceased, asking for pity and pardon for the murder committed. The neighbors decided to interrogate him on the mentioned crime, admitting then the peasant that it was the disappeared guard-river, indicating to them that the cadaver would be found between the reeds of that place. Indeed, they later found it in state of rot. Some time later, the peasant ordered some masses to be said, with which it stopped bothering forever. Is it be possible that this has happened according to the story, master? An extraordinary story, great friend. I believe firmly that the ex-personality of the dead could be made visible and tangible in some places before its final breakup. I now repeat that it is neither the soul nor the spirit of the deceased that are made visible or show somehow in the physical world, but their ex-personalities. These same entities, by being of almost physical nature, can show here in this three-dimensional world, especially in the first days of their death. So this is how we should understand the case related by you. It is clear that with the prayers and rituals it was possible to remove the avenging ghost. There is not doubt that the blood has a magnetic, very special power. With just reason, Goethe said, this is a very peculiar fluid. The author of the Zarathustra, F. Nietzsche, said, write with blood and you will learn that the blood is spirit. There exists a certain relationship between the murderer and the victim, due to the blood. With the spill of that vital fluid, the victim, thanks to such agent, could become visible and even tangible before the murderer. In the Oriental world, certain sects of black magic exist where the deceased are invoked. The fanatic dance in more and more frenzied form, hurting themselves mutually with daggers. It is obvious that the blood is poured and that by means of such fluidic agent, the invoked demons are materialized, being made totally visible and tangible in the physical world. It is clear that such sorcerer dancers are sure candidates for the abyss and the second death. I have known some very extraordinary cases of materialization. Some years ago now, when the master Gargacuachines, Julio Medina, was visiting these Mexican lands, we were witness of a really unusual case of this kind. It happens that we were both walking along the Avenue 5 of May, when in a corner we saw a graduate friend, whose name I will not mention, who was devoted to the practices of Hatha Yoga. We approached him. I, personally shaking his hand, very sincerely greeted him, because we were friends. The three of us were chatting in such corner, the people, in order to avoid tripping over the graduate, went around him. We said goodbye, and the graduate continued by the mentioned avenue, going toward the central boulevard. He was wearing a white hat with a black ribbon, a strange thing that surprised us, because never in his life he had used a hat. I explained to Julio Medina that I had not introduced him to my friend because I considered that, since this fellow was devoted to the Hatha Yoga, he would not be able to find any affinity with him. I clarified the situation for him, saying that the graduate had occupied the position of judge and that at some time he was with us studying gnosis. Then we continued our trip. Days later, I met with my friend Salas Linares in the town of Santiago of Tepalcatlalpan, and I told him what had happened. Big was my surprise when my friend told me that the mentioned graduate with which we had been in the Avenue 5 of May was already dead then by several days. Then he put a certain emphasis with the purpose of explaining to me the case. You met with a dead person, Alejandro told me. You spoke with a deceased. When that happened, on the day of such an encounter, the deceased had died in an automobile accident outside of Mexico City, in the north of the country. As you can see, this is another materialization, and I think that the ex-personality of that deceased was really what became visible and tangible at noon before all the people and in the light of the sun. 3. Could you not, Master, when shaking his hand, tell whether that person was alive or dead? Distinguished young lady, I want to say to you that the ex-personality of a dead person is so exactly equal to the physical aspect of the person that lived, that frankly no difference can be noticed between alive and dead. The only thing that I felt a little strange was the chilliness of that hand, a cold characteristic of a sepulture. It is clear, the cold of a cadaver. That man spoke with a certain tone, a little mortuary, and I foresaw something about death. I felt as if he were already dead, and in this I didn't make a mistake. When I emphasize the idea that it is the ex-personality of the deceased what is made visible and tangible, I don't discard the possibility that the discarnate themselves are also able to, in some occasions, to materialize here in this three-dimensional world, in the total absence of the funeral ex-personalidad. For a certain lady friend of mine one day told me that when their father died, their sister was in the city of Los Angeles in California, arriving at the home of their father when he was already buried, and this was why she was not able to see him. From that day, their sister every night went to bed in the chamber of their father and requested to him to materialize so that she could see him. A certain night, being already in bed, she saw a hand that rested on one of the furniture of the chamber, and she then gave a scream from fright at the same moment that she heard a voice that said, "Don't get scared, Maria, it is me, your father. I just wanted to see if you could stand to see me totally, but as I see that this is not so, I will leave now, and I beg you not to call me any more, and that you leave me in peace." Could you explain to me, Master, if it was the soul or the ex-personality of the deceased the one that became visible and tangible? The question of the lady here present I find certainly very interesting. I want to say to you, my friends, that the ex-personality of the deceased normally lives in the vault, even when it sometimes escapes from the sepulchral grave in order to be made visible in any place or simply in order to visit somebody. It is unquestionable that in the case of the story, it was not properly the ex-personality of the dead that was partly visible and tangible, but the ghost of the deceased, the soul of the dead. This is indicated by his discernment, words, wisdom, etc. Chapter 14. The Unfolding. My friends, it is necessary that you understand the necessity of learning how to leave the physical body at will. I want you to understand that the physical body is a house in which we don't have to be prisoners. It is essential to enter the region of the dead at will, to visit the celestial regions, to know other worlds of the infinite space. Outside of the physical body one could have the luxury of invoking the dear departed that have already entered the doors of death. These will come to our call and we will chat then with them personally. There are magicians, necromancers that know how to invoke the dead in order to make them visible and tangible in this physical world, but we prefer to penetrate the region where they live, visit them, know there in what state they are, etc., etc., etc. Outside of the physical body we could acquire full knowledge on the mysteries of life and death. Outside of the physical body we could invoke the angels in order to converse with them face to face, personally. It is good that you understand that in the past we had other bodies, other existences, and outside of the physical body we can remember them, and revive them with total accuracy. The key in order to leave the dense form, to be outside of this carnal body, is very simple. Listen well, hear me. In those instants of transition that exist between vigil and dream, one can escape the body of the flesh at will. A very special case comes to my memory at these moments. Once I arrived at a town and I looked for a hotel, but all the hotels were full. There was not hospitality for anybody. However, I got a lodging in a collective sleeping room of guests. There were many beds where the guests slept. I paid for the last of these beds that remained free and in it I went to sleep. But it happened that, somewhere around midnight, a man knocked at the door, also requesting lodging. The owner of that business led him to our communal room, telling him, "I don't have beds, you see, all are occupied." The passerby protested, saying, "In no part there is hospitality, I will sleep in this living room. Although I am in the floor, but for me a simple mattress on the floor, or a carpet or mat and a pillow for my head because I am very tired." The owner of the guest house, moved, consented willingly what the man requested from her. I was awake seeing and hearing everything. The mentioned passerby, going to bed on the floor, tried to go to sleep. I observed some details. While the man was in vigil, he moved to and fro, like wanting to make himself comfortable on the hard floor. Suddenly he stopped moving, and I then could see, with astonishment, an ovoid grisly cloud that was coming out from between the pores of the whole body. Such cloud floated for some instants above that tired body and finally, placing itself in a vertical position, it assumed the form of the pilgrim. He looked at me fixedly and then left the room walking normally. Here it is, my friends, what always happens in that state of transition that exists between vigil and dream. The pilgrim distanced himself from his dense form. You all do the same, but in an unconscious form. I don't want to say that that gentleman of long ago had carried out a conscious exit. However, the same thing can be carried out at will positively conscious. Really, this is a natural process. Realizing one's own natural processes could never be harmful. To carry out all these functions consciously, instead of making it in unconscious and involuntary form, is in no way dangerous and, because of this, I put certain emphasis on the necessity of taking advantage of the instant of transition between the vigil and the dream in order to abandon the physical body and enter into the region of the mysteries. There are incredulous people that say, "What can you say about the beyond? What could you know on what there is beyond Tages further up? Maybe you have gone to the other world and returned, etc., etc., etc." My friends, I assure you that with this procedure you could go to the other world and return. I could swear to you by what I mostly love in this life that I go to this other world every time that I want, and that you could also go. The important point is that you should not be afraid. When I want to leave the physical body at will, I take advantage of the instant of starting to doze, the moment in which one is neither sleeping completely, neither awake completely. At that precise moment I do what was done by that pilgrim of my history. I get up smoothly, feeling myself vaporous, fluidic, gassy. I later leave from the room the same as that passerby of the house of guests, and I go into the street. The space is infinite, and flying I could travel to all the places of the earth or of the infinite. You could do the same, my good friend. Everything depends on you wanting to do it. Above all, one should not identify with the material body. In the precise moment of making the experiment, you should think that you are not the body, understand that you are souls, you should feel like souls, fluidic, subtle. Later, feeling so, in such a state, get up simply from the bed. What I am saying should translate into facts, my dear friends. Listen well, you should not start thinking that you are leaving the body, because there you would stay thinking and then would not carry out the experiment. I repeat, translate into facts what I am emphasizing. Do what that pilgrim of our history did. He didn't begin to think that he was going to leave the body, he simply acted, got up from the hard floor where he was put to bed. I repeat with total clarity, he got up subtle, vaporous, and left that place. When will you understand? At what time of the history of your lives are you going to learn to leave the body at will? Do you want to know something of the beyond? Do you want to chat with the divine beings face to face? Invoke them, call them loudly when you are outside of the body. It is clear that they will concur for love toward you, with the purpose of instructing you. All that you need is to abandon laziness and pay attention to the process of the drowsiness. The blankets with which one covers oneself are very pleasant. You find it difficult to abandon the slack, the inertia. Remember that the will is essential, and if you really propose to leave your body at will, you will achieve this if you follow my instructions with accuracy. All the wise men of the past have abandoned the dense form in order to travel consciously and positively in the infinite space. They then chatted with the sacred gods and received marvelous instructions. Outside of this physical world, we could experience all the mysteries of life and death in direct form. Now you will understand why I put so much emphasis in the necessity of learning how to leave from the physical body at will. 1. Master, in order to leave from the physical body, is it necessary to have any kind of learning beforehand, or is there somebody that knows from birth how to do it? Because I have heard many people to say, I do know how to travel in the astral. Could you explain to me if it is the same? Art, my estimable friend, I find your question very appropriate. On behalf of the truth, I should say to you that nobody had to teach me how to leave in astral. I was born with that faculty. For that reason it is that I know the mysteries of life and death. Now you can understand by yourselves the way in which I obtain all this knowledge that I write down in my books. However, my case is not an exception. My wife Lightlantes also knows how to leave from the physical body at will. We leave together, we visit the temples of mysteries, we have helped many people of remote places, investigated mysteries, we have spoken with the gods, the angels, and with the ineffable devas, and we return to the physical body bringing both of us the same memories. This is similar to when two people leave from a house to take a walk on a Sunday and they return talking about the different happenings during their walk. In the different corners of the planet Earth there are many people that know how to leave from the body at will. It is necessary that you also learn how to do this so as to get to know the big marvels from nature and of the cosmos, and also what there is beyond death. 2. A master, you tell us that in order to leave in astral it is necessary to take advantage of the moment in which one is between vigil and sleep. In other moments is one able to do it? Our distinguished young lady, I want that you know that when one is already practical in this matter of the exit in astral, one could escape of the physical body at will, even when the carnal body is sitting down or standing up, but, I repeat, this is for very practiced people. The normal, the natural, is to go to bed in order to unfold. 3. Master, could one invoke any master especially so that he helps us to leave in astral? Well, friend, let me tell you that there are invisible beings that help us. However, you could request aid from your own particular divine mother. I refer to your own mother nature, because it is obvious that each one has his own. You should beg her in the name of the Christ that she takes you out from the body in that precise instant in which you are in state of transition between vigil and dream. 4th Master, does any special prayer exist in order to call to our particular mother nature? Could you teach it to us? My pupil, I am going to give you an advice that will serve to everybody. You go to bed face up in your bed with the body well relaxed and grow drowsy, reciting with your thought and with your heart the following prayer. I believe in God, I believe in my divine mother, and I believe in white magic. Mother of mine, take me out of my body. You recite this magic prayer with all devotion and with intensive faith. Pray it millions of times, if there is necessity, while growing drowsy. But you remember that statement that says, to God requesting and with the mallet hitting. When you already feel in that state of lassitude characteristic of the dream, upon beginning in your mind the first drowsy images, conquer your laziness, I beg you, and feeling like a subtle and delicate ghost, do that of the pilgrim of our history in the living room of guests, get up from your bed and leave from your house, understood? 5 Master, could we request to our particular mother nature to lead us to a certain place, or does she lead us where we should go in accordance with our preparation? The question that you have asked is a very good one. The Divine Mother knows where she should take us. However, we could also request her that she leads us to this or that other place, and if she wants to do it is all right. But if she doesn't want to take us to where we wanted, but rather to transport us to another different place, we should welcome her decision with pleasure, because it is clear that our mother knows what we need, what is more appropriate. Chapter 15. The Blue Men. 1. We found the following story in a magazine in circulation inside the Federal District. In 1960, a scientific Soviet magazine, leaning on the stories of the Egyptian historian Manetho and of the Greek Herodotus, as well as in the inscriptions on the enigma of Atlantis and of the coming of extraterrestrial beings, they asked themselves the following question: were the Atlantis a people of blue complexion? Some traditions say that the Atlantis founded the Egyptian civilization and that the oldest leaders of the dynasties were Atlantis of pure race. The Egyptian artists, that reproduced the objects in their murals carefully and respected the colors, how did they paint their gods? Osiris had a green face, by being the god of the vegetation that is reborn. Thought had a green or pale blue pigment, and Amon and Shu were frankly blue. Why did this color appear in the Egyptian gods? This can only be answered in one way: they were descendants of a people of blue skin. We should believe that Osiris and Thought, that arrived to Egypt coming from a country of high mountains, found a plain with warm climate and much sun, and they saw their complexion modified by the sun, that ended up giving them an olive skin. Yellow plus blue equals green, as they have it in our days the inhabitants of the Mediterranean. Could you explain to us something in this respect, Master? The said article is a little vague and obscure. It talks about the blue race. It supposes that this comes from Atlantis. It does not deny the origin of the Egyptian culture. It is obvious that the blue men are the ancient builders of the pyramids. However, something fails in the article, lines mentioned above and places between quotation marks. Allow me the freedom of differing. We needed to emphasize the concrete fact that the blue men never came from the Atlantic continent. Some suppose that the blue men came from Venus, and it is appropriate to quote another part of the mentioned article. Let us remember the extraordinary events that happened in remote times in Venus, that were written down for the astronomers of the antiquity. Saint Augustine affirms that Castor, from Rhodes, left a story of an astonishing prodigy that happened in that planet, that suddenly changed of size, of color, and even of orbit around the sun, at the same time that it lost satellites. This unprecedented fact should happen in times of King Ogyges, founder of Thebes, as it is asserted by Adrasto, Cyzicenio, and Dies, notable mathematicians from Naples. What did happen in Venus so that does part of its population had to flee headlong bound for the Earth? A collision? A nuclear explosion? We could not say anything, but But if any of these hypotheses happen to be true, we will have to believe that Venus was bound to the history of our planet, and it is surprising the Soviet sages insist on relating the mystery of Venus with that of Atlantis and Tiahuanaco. As you will see, dear reader, the author of the mentioned article and whose quotations were written here with the purpose of refuting them, has two different opinions and neither of them is true. Here we in Mexico knew of the case of Salvador Villanueva Medina, author of a book entitled I Was in the Planet Venus. I am acquainted with this man personally, and I know that he is sincere, no chatterer or fantasist. He has been rigorously examined by the psychiatrists and the results obviously were those of a serious and totally balanced man. Such a gentleman wrote for the good of humanity, told his fellow men what had happened, how, while working as a mere chauffeur, driving a car to the United States, he did undergo such vicissitudes. The automobile was damaged, and the North Americans that traveled with him got off the car abandoning it in order to go to a nearby town with the purpose of requesting aid. Villanueva Medina remained alone, got under the car with the purpose of inspecting and fixing it. He felt steps in the sand, left from under the car and met with a Venusian that chatted with him. What happened later is very interesting. They invited him and he accepted. He was taken in a ship to the planet Venus, where he met an extraordinary civilization. After 5 days he was brought back to Earth. The description that Villanueva Medina gave of the men of Venus agrees with the one given by Adamski, famous North American scientist. Stature of the Venusians, average, 1.10 m, white rosy skin, silver hair, beautiful face, etc., etc. Villanueva Medina did not see, then, blue men in the planet Venus. Therefore, such hypothesis also remains discarded. From where did the blue men come then? They existed, it is clear, many people so affirm, but they ignore their origin. We solemnly assert by saying the blue men came from the blue galaxy. There is not doubt that they created the powerful civilizations of Egypt, Chaldea, Assyria, Babylon, etc., etc. 2. Could you tell me, why did they come, with what purposes and for what reason did they come? With great pleasure I will give an answer to the gentleman. I like his question very much. Let give you some information concerning the cosmic universal fraternity. In the same way as mutual help exists between good people, so also there is between planet and planet and between galaxy and galaxy. The masters of the blue galaxy, moved by universal love, have worried very much for our earthling humanity, helping us unceasingly since the deepest night of the centuries. I repeat, they were really those that instructed the architects of the pyramids, those that taught the secret doctrine to the Atlantis and to the Egyptians, those that established the glorious mysteries of the powerful civilizations of Chaldea and Assyria. Their work has been marvelous, formidable. They have really loved us and they still continue loving us, because although it may seem incredible, they live in this heart-stricken world with the purpose of helping us in the critical hour that precedes the great cataclysm. 3. I am surprised by your story. Could you tell me, if they do live in this planet, in what place do they reside? The question that the lady makes is by the way quite interesting, and it is well worthwhile that I give you a concrete answer. I have to inform you that the blue men live in an underground city under the ice of the South Pole. For how is it be possible that they could subsist at temperatures so low? Is their organism different to ours? How do they manage in order to live? We are going to answer the questions of the gentleman. I request greater attention of the auditory. The organisms of the blue men are similar to ours, that is obvious. I want you all to understand me. The men coming from the blue galaxy don't have a house of ice like the Eskimos, or anything like that. It would be absurd to think that such creatures live between the icebergs. It is better to understand that they possess an underground city, constructed in the bowels of the earth. If there is ice above the rocks and the earth in general, they don't affect at all the submerged city. The climatological problem doesn't exist for the blue men. It is clear that if they could conquer the infinite space, they would possess formidable technical advances. It is not difficult to understand that they could have created their own climate inside their mysterious city. 5. Why, since there are other places in our planet with better climate and vegetation, did they choose a so inaccessible place? I answer the gentleman. The lands of the North and South Poles, today covered with ice after the past glaciation, had in other times powerful civilizations, magnificent equatorial climates and splendid cities. Do not be amazed by what I affirm. This underground city where now the blue men live is very old. It was built before the past glaciation. This means that such city has many million years of existence, that it comes from the archaic times of the earth, and that always was the secret habitation of the blue men. Since they have cosmic ships with which they can travel through the infinite space, it is clear and manifest that they don't suffer of problems of supply. 6. These blue men, Master, have at some time left from their city in order to live together with the earthlings. We are going to answer the distinguished lady. Let me tell you, young lady, that in the age of Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon, such men were received like true gods. Unfortunately, we are in the Iron Age, in the time of the world degeneration, and for that reason, they rarely mix with the multitudes. However, it is appropriate to affirm that from time to time some of these extraordinary men live together with the people. Certain lady told me the concrete fact that she had seen a man of blue complexion in Buenos Aires, Argentina. 7. Master, do these blue men have any mission to complete at this time or in the future? I see that who has asked this question is a Gnostic international missionary, and it is clear that with the greatest pleasure I will give an answer. The blue men are aiding humanity with telepathic procedures favorable to some, and it is evident that inside some years these extraordinary men will have to rush to the street openly in order to admonish the people, in order to call them to repentance, in order to make them see the awful cataclysm that is approaching. 8. Master, would you be able to tell me how many inhabitants exist approximately in that blue city? Well, distinguished gentleman, I will give answer to your question. Let me tell you that I have not counted them. I could assure you that it is quite a big city, very similar in size to Mexico City, with several million people and many houses and streets and avenues and ample spaces in order to keep their ships. More exactly, I don't know what amount of people live there, at least I have not asked the king of the city. 9. I am very surprised that they have a monarchic government, but would you be able to tell me, since are they illuminated beings, if is the king that governs them is divine? Distinguished young lady, your question is disturbing. I am glad to answer to you. I know His Majesty, and I solemnly say to you that he belongs to the solar dynasties. He is an authentic illuminated master of perfection, who does not need police or armed troops in order to be obeyed in his city. Everybody respects him because he is terrifyingly divine. 10. Master, could you tell us how it is that you managed to get in contact with this monarch? Maybe you have a cosmic ship, or which medium have you used in order to arrive to the blue city where these beings live? Kind gentleman, I am going to respond with clarity to your yearning to inquire and investigate. Telepathic procedures exist. Nobody ignores that by means of telepathy one could be put in contact with people that live in different places of the world, even at remote distances. However, we go farther still in this question. We have secret procedures by means of which we could transport ourselves spiritually to any secret place, including, as it is logical, to the underground city of the blue men. I have visited such city, I don't deny it, and all of you could do it also if you know our procedures. The important thing is that you join our Gnostic studies, study our books, etc. It is clear that upon visiting spiritually that mysterious city, I was supposed to request first the permission of His Majesty the King. Without the permission of that monarch that governs the city, I could not have strolled peacefully by the marvelous streets of that mysterious metropolis. 11. Could you explain to us something about it? How is it, and what type of construction does it have? It is clear, dear sir, that splendid city, built in the bowels of the earth, is very different to all those that you know at the moment in this troubled world in which we live. A winding road leads the visitor to the doors of the city. The streets and avenues are illuminated, as it is natural, by marvelous lamps that make of that gigantic cavern something luminous and radiant, because it seemed to be in splendid day. One could say that they manage the light and the darkness in perfect form. They have 70 splendid meeting rooms distributed in the different places of the city. In such enclosures they celebrate their assemblies or carry out their studies. 12. What classes of studies do these beings undertake? It is natural, distinguished young lady, that their studies be of an advanced type. They consist of cosmic sciences, highly spiritual matters, nature, etc., etc. It is appropriate to say to you that inside that great mystic and ineffable city glows the Sphinx, a live symbol of the initiatic wisdom. 13. Could you tell me how they dress, and what are the means of transport inside the city? I want to inform you, my good friend, that the members of that blue race dress certainly with elegance and distinction. They use beautiful tunics of the old style, beautiful cloaks, sandals of very classical style, etc. They come and go by the streets of the city along the sidewalks or benches. They are of medium stature and beautiful bearing. They are transported either on foot or in cars different to those we know, propelled by electric power. 14. Could you explain to us, Master, what type of food do they have and where do they get it? Your question is certainly very interesting. It is obvious that they have to eat in order to live. Their basic food is the marine algae. They pick them up off the bottom of the oceans of the whole planet Earth. Their ships allow them to transport themselves to where they want in time and in space, but it is clear that they bring from their galaxy many other types of food with which they are nurtured. Please realize that they are not prisoners inside the city, that they possess freedom in order to travel in their ships to where they want to go, that is all. 15. Can you tell us what kind of coins do they use or if they don't have coinage? No. Miss, the authentic men, the cosmic men don't have need of money in order to live. They have systems, economic methods vastly superior to those of us, poor intellectual animals of the earth. 16. What is the message that they have for humanity, at the current time, the blue men? Kind gentleman, your question is formidable, and it is clear that I proceed to answer it. A blue lady that always remains next to the king told me the following: the planet Earth is going to be destroyed. The people that live on the surface of the earth believe that all those cities and materials things that they possess are going to last all of their lives. They become attached to things, and that is absurdity, because all that they have is going to be destroyed. 17. According to what you have just communicated to us, would it be preferable no longer to devote ourselves to obtain material objects? Your question is disturbing. Permit me, my good friend, to say to you that we should live in agreement with the law of the scale. Don't wallow in the mud of the wealth, neither in the dirt of the penury. We should have the necessary things for life, but never get attached to them. You remember the last days of Pompeii. The people then tried to flee with their treasures, attached to all their properties, and they perished. The excavations demonstrate that the inhabitants of Pompeii, in their majority, were squashed by the ruins of the city or by the stones of the Vesube. The blue men will complete a gigantic world mission in those most awful moments that are approaching. They will struggle to make us return to the divinity. They will endeavor to show us the way to salvation. Chapter 16. Nahuls. My friends, we will chat today a little on the Nahuls. This is very interesting because it belongs to the old traditions of our Mexican people. I want you to listen to me with infinite patience, yearning to understand deeply all and each one of my words. There come to my memory, at these instants, multiple extraordinary cases that it is worthwhile to study. Oaxaca has always been a town of mystic legends devoted to occultism that many esotericists should know. When a boy is born in that region, he is properly related to the famous Nahuls. No matter if the creature is born at night or by day, the relatives in any event will construct a circle with ashes around the house. We have been told that at dawn prints will be observed in the ash that have been left by the animals of the place. It is unquestionable that if such prints correspond, for example, to a vixen of the mountains, this would be the Nahul of the creature, but if the rakes were of another animal, it undoubtedly would be this elemental, the Nahul of the newly born. Let us pass now to the considerations of the vegetable Nahuls. From olden times, the navel of the newly born is buried together with the sprout of a tree. Obviously, that tree remains correlated with the creature that grows at the same time as this vegetable elemental. The people of the place know very well that the elemental of such tree could help the creature related to it in many aspects of his life. Old Aborigines from America always worked with the marvelous elementals of the plants. They carried out with them infinite magic phenomenon, cures at a distance, conjurations of tempests, etc., etc., etc. It is good to remember now that the nature elementals are the angelic creatures that enliven all that is, all that has been and all that will be. Each mineral atom is the physical body of an inferior elemental. Each plant is the physical body of an intelligent vegetable elemental. Each animal creature is the material vehicle of an elemental of that kingdom. In ancient times, before we begin the cycle of human existence, it is obvious that we were elementals. Now you will understand why we are related with these or those plants or with these or those stones or animals. You can already see that in Oaxaca these millennial traditions have not got lost, and there is no doubt that many native people are properly protected by those elementals with which they are related at birth. The Nahuls are, therefore, ideal elementals when we really love them. A very extraordinary Nahul is undoubtedly the black cat. I am going to relate next an experiment that I performed with such elemental. At home we had a small black kitten. I proposed to win his affection, and it is clear that I achieved it. One night I wanted to make a transcendental metaphysical experiment. When in my bed, I placed the innocent animal at my side. I relaxed my body in the correct manner and then concentrated deeply in the mentioned feline, requesting that he take me out of my physical body. I admit in plain language that such concentration was long and very deep, possibly was prolonged for the space of an hour. I grew slightly drowsy by means of the intensive concentration, but I certainly experienced then an extraordinary surprise. That creature seemed to increase of size and then became a giant of enormous proportions stretched out at the side of my bed. I touched him with my right hand, and I found that he appeared to be made of steel. He irradiated electricity and his face was black like the night. There is not doubt that everything in his body was of the same color, but he had left the animal form, assuming the human figure instead, with exception of the face that, although gigantic, continued being that of a cat. This was something unusual that I didn't expect. I was terribly surprised and, a little frightened, I conjured him with the conjuration of the seven of the wise Solomon. The result was that spell ceased. Instants later, next to me, the innocent creature was again in the form of a kitten. Very concerned, I walked the other day by the streets of the city. I had believed that fear had been eliminated from my nature, and here it is, now. This Nahul had given me a tremendous fright. However, in no way I was resigned to lose the battle, and I gave myself courage, awaiting anxious for the night in order to repeat the experiment. I placed again the small creature in my bed to the right, like the previous night. I relaxed my physical body, not leaving any muscle in tension, and I later concentrated deeply on the feline, keeping there in the deep of my heart the intention of not letting myself be frightened again. Worn soldier doesn't die in war, and I already was obviously informed about what should happen. Therefore, the fear had been frankly eliminated from my interior. After having elapsed an hour more or less, in very deep concentration, the same phenomenon of the previous night was repeated exactly. It is obvious that the elemental of that kitten left the body so as to take a human gigantic and terrible figure. From my bed, I looked at it. It was awful in a grand way, terrifying. Certainly his so enormous body didn't fit completely, and therefore his legs and feet surpassed my humble bed. What astonished me most is that such elemental, upon abandoning his dense body, could materialize physically, be made visible and tangible to our senses, because I could touch it with my physical hands and it seemed to be made of iron. I could see it with my physical eyes and his face was tremendous. But this time I was not afraid. I proposed to have complete control on myself, and it is clear that I achieved this. Then, speaking with firm and slow voice, and I demanded to be taken out from my physical body, saying, "Get up, kitten, from this bed." Upon saying this, the giant stood up. Later on I went on commanding him, "Take me out now of this physical body, take me into the astral." Upon saying this, that extraordinary giant answered me with the following words, "Give me your hands." Of course, I lifted my hands, a moment that the elemental took advantage of in order to pull me and take me out of the physical body. That stranger being was endowed with a terrible force, but irradiated love, and it is clear that he wanted to serve me, so they are the elementals of nature. Already standing in the astral, next to my bed and having as a companion that mysterious being, I started commanding him again, "Take me to downtown in the capital of Mexico." "Follow me," it was the answer of that colossus. He left the house walking slowly, and I followed him step by step. We walked by different places of the city until we arrived at San Juan de Letrán, and somewhere around, in a corner, we stopped for a moment. It was midnight, and I yearned to finish the experiment in a happy manner. I saw a group of gentlemen in a corner chatting. They were in their physical body, and it is therefore unquestionable that they didn't notice me. However, I wanted to make myself visible and tangible in the face of them. Such was my purpose. Addressing then that giant Nahul of the marvels and prodigies, in sweet but imperative tone I gave him a new order: "Move me now to the world of 3-dimension, to the physical world." The elemental Nahul put his 2 hands on my shoulders at the same time that he exerted on these a certain pressure. I felt that I abandoned the astral world and penetrated in the physical world. I became visible and tangible in the face of that group of gentlemen that was in that place. Approaching them, I asked, "So, what time is it, gentlemen?" "It is 12:30. "Thank you, gentlemen. I want to tell you that I come from the invisible regions and that I have decided to make myself visible and tangible for you." Is strange words, aren't they? Those men looked at me amazed. I went on, telling them, "See you later, gentlemen. I return now again to the invisible world." I requested the elemental that I go over again to the supersensible regions, and it is unquestionable that the creature obeyed at once. I succeeded in seeing the astonishment of all those gentlemen. They felt horror, panic, and they went away speedily from that place. New orders given to the elemental giant were enough so that he brought me back to the house. Upon returning to the room and entering the chamber, I saw that that mysterious gentleman had lost his gigantic size, and had penetrated the small feline body that was on the bed. This had happened in fact by the pineal gland, located, as is known, in the superior part of the brain. I did the same. I put my astral feet on the above-mentioned gland of the physical brain, and I felt then inside my dense body in order to wake up in my bed. I looked at the kitten, gave him some caresses, thanked him and said, "I thank you for the help given. You and I are friends." From then, my dear friends, I have come to believe that the kittens, these elemental felines, could be ideal for all aspirants to the superior life. With this kind of Nahul, any occultist could learn to leave into the astral consciously and positively. What is important is not to be afraid. Valor is very much needed. It is appropriate to mention that in this class of psychic experiments it is required that the color of the cat be black. Many cultured ignoramuses could have the luxury of laughing at all these occult presentations, but to us that doesn't matter. We are writing for people of spiritual restlessness. We are speaking for people that really yearn for the awakening of the consciousness. One master, could you explain to me what it is an elemental? Art, my friend, I want you to understand that every atom is a trio of matter, energy, and consciousness. Obviously, the conscious aspect of any atom is an elemental. You can enlarge now this idea a little more. Think of the kitten of our experiment. There you will see a physical organism. It is obvious that this vital structure is constituted by organs and for cells. Think now that each cell is a sum of atoms. You break an atom and it will liberate energy. Clearly, all organism in the last synthesis is reduced to different types and subtypes of energy. But there is something more in the creature, or in creatures. There exists intelligence and consciousness. Undoubtedly, the consciousness of the kitten of our experiment, or of any animal creature, it is the inferior elemental, the Nahul, as they say, the native of Oaxaca. Undoubtedly, such consciousness has an etheric body that allows it to be made visible and tangible in any place and show in diverse forms, as you will have observed in my story. Think of the plants. In each one of these we also see the trio of matter, energy, and consciousness. This last is always the elemental. There is elemental in the fire, in the air, and they also exist in the water and in the earth. The old sages learned how to manage the elementals. The magicians of ancient times ordered the elementals of the air, and these obeyed, retiring the clouds or moving them away according to the will of the magician. They commanded the salamanders of the fire, and then such magicians were able to act on the volcanoes of the earth at will. They ordered the elementals of the water, and it is obvious that they could appease the tempests or to make the rivers and lagoons overflow. They conjured the elementals of the mineral kingdom in order to carry out operations of alchemy, or in order to make the earth tremble, or simply in order to conjure the earthquakes, and the result was always marvelous. I believe that now the gentleman will be able to understand better what the elementals are. I advise you to study the work entitled The Elementals by F. Hartmann, the great German initiate. 2. I have heard say that with the black cats they make black magic, they invoke demons, etc. What can you tell me about this, master? Ah, distinguished young lady, everything in nature has a double use. There is the plant that cures and the plant that kills. You already see the magnificence that is electricity, how many machines move with electric power, how varied services it produces for us. However, it also serves for the electric chair. I believe that nobody ignores that the electricity in hands of the executioners is the cause of death. The black cat is used wickedly by the perverse of the black magic, but it could also be used by the saints of the white magic. The elementals in themselves are neither good nor bad, everything depends on the use that we make of them. If we use them for good purposes, we do unblemished work, but if we had the wrong aims, we shall do evil work. I believe that none of the friends here present are dedicated to the black magic. I find that all could use the services of the black cat, that is especially magic, in order to learn how to live in the astral body consciously and positively. Working for the awakening of the consciousness is not a crime. Chapter 18. Jinn Cases. 1. At the end of the Second World War occurred the case, in Mexico City, that a girl of scarcely 5 years old, of name Maria, daughter of very poor parents, on an occasion in which the mother was sick, made appear, before 3 neighbors, a beautiful bunch of red roses, saying that they were to put them to the Virgin, so that her mom alleviates. The fact was very commented, in the surroundings and inside the vicinity where they lived. On another occasion, falling in a true state of ecstasy, babbling certain words that only she knew, she made appear 2 thick golden pure stones, that helped vastly to improve the conditions of life of her parents. After this astonishing event, she gave examples of clairvoyance and prophecies. On certain occasion, a couple went to consult her, because of the illness of the gentleman. She concentrated, closed her eyes, and instants later a puppet of cloth with several pins in the body appeared between her hands. The girl proceeded to take them out and then threw the puppet amid an incantation, in a brazier where she burned sulfur, healing the bewitched man definitively. As the girl grew up, she developed the power of curing by means of magnetic passes, having long lines of sick persons that demanded help and comfort, and which she healed. But when she became 15 years old and developed an interest for the mundane things, she little by little degenerated her habits, until she was converted into an ordinary human being. Could the master tell me what was the cause of this case? Ah, this question is certainly very interesting, and it is well worthwhile to answer it. Obviously, that girl was endowed with jinn powers. Unquestionably she could make contributions, bringing roses, pass them from the astral to the physical world, make come, from the distance, objects like that puppet with pins, etc., etc., etc. It is patent and manifesto the concrete fact that when she became interested in the material things, when she distanced herself from the transcendent spirituality, she lost her powers. It comes to memory in these instants the case of the enigmatic and powerful Count Cagliostro. Old traditions tell us that, upon leaving Cagliostro the prison of the Bastille in Paris, where he was a prisoner due to that case involving the necklace of the Queen that produced so much scandal, he celebrated an extraordinary banquet. The whole of France was moved when it knew the episode of this banquet. It was clear for the guests that the Count Cagliostro possessed formidable powers. The table of the banquet dazzled with the gold, the silver, and the splendor of the guests. However, some positions were empty, but the dishes were served there also. Suddenly, something extraordinary happened. The empty positions were occupied by characters that had died some time ago, and the guests all were filled with fright. But seeing the serenity of the Count Cagliostro, they controlled themselves in order to eat and drink in the face of the spectre that smiled in the banquet. This fact was commented in all of Paris. It has been completely demonstrated that Cagliostro possessed extraordinary jinn powers, because he could take the deceased out of their world, the astral, in order to make them come to the physical world, and this is clearly astonishing. It is also said that on another occasion, the Count visited a poor family with the purpose of having dinner with them. Those people were a little embarrassed, because they didn't possess any beautiful china, cutlery, or glasses to entertain such a rich individual in decorous form. Cagliostro, understanding all this, in the presence of the hosts took out from the astral world a very valuable pure golden dinner service, beautiful glasses and magnificent cutlery, and then requested that the banquet be served. All the assistants ate and drank astonished using so rich dinner service. Finished the banquet, Cagliostro gave the service to those people, with the purpose that they improve their economic situation. Here in Mexico, during the time of the colony, an unusual jinn event happened. It occurred the case that a Philippine soldier appeared dressed in the uniform of the army of his country, in the middle of the Zocalo in Mexico, DF. The man was stopped immediately, and when interrogated he could only say, astonished, that he ignored how he had left his country, how he had been transferred instantly to this Mexico City, and he gave data on events that had happened in his country the day previous to his capture. Investigations that were undertaken confirmed exactly all the data that the soldier had given. At that time airplanes didn't exist, neither ships that could transport any passenger from Philippines to Mexico in few hours. This, notably, was more than enough reason for the Catholic Inquisition inevitably to intervene. The tradition says that that unfortunate man was judged. We don't still know if he was burned in a fire or only imprisoned, or perhaps tortured. Another extraordinary case happened to me. After having put my physical body in jinn state, in accordance with the methods and procedures that I have taught all of you, suspended in the atmosphere of the world, I flew above some regions of South America. Suddenly, going by above a country property, I felt attracted by a very special magnetic force toward the house of that property. Upon putting foot on the floor, I could verify the concrete fact that certain neighbors, workers of that property, prayed hotly, conjuring me. Those naive creatures believed that I could possibly be a sorcerer. It is obvious that they wanted to eliminate and destroy me. Already on Earth, I saw them advancing on my insignificant person, seizing machetes, looking at me with a terrible anger. I saw a room, separated, and I entered it, hiding under a table. Then, taking some steps back, I collided with a wall. In those instants, they succeeded in hitting me with a stick, hurting me in an arm, but I made a great effort and put my body inside the fourth dimension. Then I crossed that wall, that no longer was for me an obstacle, and floating in the atmosphere I returned home again. For several days my arm was inflamed, but eventually it healed definitively. 2. Could you tell us, Master, how is it possible that floating inside the fourth dimension, those country dwellers could see you, and how did you fall in the third dimension? Art, my friends, I want you to know that the atmosphere is not in the same conditions at all times. There are special cosmic instants, determined by the radiation of the planets, during which jinn things and objects happen to be made visible and tangible, before the people of the physical three-dimensional world. That was my case, and then it is obvious that I was seen by those country dwellers, since they possess an extraordinary faith in all their rites and prayers. They easily could make me descend to that place, understood? P. How did you manage to return again to the fourth dimension and escape from those country dwellers? Art, my friends, I want you to know that in those instants, my physical body was totally saturated with the radiation of the astral world. Obviously, I only had to make a great effort of will to re-enter the fourth dimension. Any way you like it, this case was so serious, I had to make this effort, and I made it with magnificent results, that is all. At these moments it arises in my memory, the remembrance of the mulata of Córdoba, in Veracruz. This was an extraordinary woman of the state of Veracruz, Mexico. The Inquisition prosecuted her claiming she was a witch and a sorcerer. She remained serene and impassive in the face of these accusers and slanderers. Locked inside a cruel prison, and in the dawn of the day fixed for her execution, the gendarmes entered the prison. They were amazed, astonished, upon seeing she was very cheerful and dressed as if for a party. Incredible! You should be dressed for mourning, preparing for death, because you are supposed to know that you are to go in the fire, where you will be burned alive with green firewood and slow fire, without the spill of blood. The mulata responded, calmly, there is still time. Gentlemen, calm down a little. Above all, I want that you see how I know how to paint a wall. Then, taking a piece of chalk with her right hand, she painted before them, on the wall, a ship with its sails, ties, etc., etc., etc. Addressing then her guardians, she interrogated them, saying, "How do you like this drawing?" They responded, "As a drawing it is very good, only that ship lacks the company." "This is not problem," answered the mulata, "I am going to paint it right now. Observe, see." When they directed their gaze again toward the ship, they could see then the mulata, there, inside that drawing, saying happily of them, "Goodbye, goodbye." And when amazed and confused, they looked at the place that she had occupied inside the prison, frightened, they saw that that woman had disappeared. So it was that the mulata of Córdoba made fun of the Inquisition, my dear friends. There is not doubt that something similar had to have happened to Count Cagliostro, because all the data that have been given of his death in a prison of the Inquisition are obviously contradictory. We, Gnostics, know that Count Cagliostro still lives with the same physical body that he had in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, etc., etc., etc. On behalf of the truth, I have to say that I am a personal friend of Count Cagliostro and that I know him very well.